American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501, Raven vs. Voldemort, Crisis in the Great Hall. Fantasy attack. Tom swung his wand, and bright magic energy instantly rushed towards Raven. There was a whistling sound in the air, and the magic energy tore the air and suddenly attacked Raven. Although her mind was relaxed for a moment, Raven quickly responded. Whoosh! Raven's body dodged the attack, and her backhand released another flying sand and rocks spell. The black energy condensed by magic instantly attacked Tom. Tom immediately stood up and retreated, casting the iron armor spell on himself while releasing the fainting spell. Bang! The magic energy released by both sides gathered in the air, making a strong explosion. The brilliant colors exploded, and the students in the audience were stunned. Harry and Hermione were completely stunned for a moment. The two did not expect that the two siblings of the Padraic family would be so cruel. Bang! The magic energy released by Tom was once again blown away by Raven's precise control of the wand spell. Is this what you can do? Tom, if you are at this level now, you can't beat me. Raven easily blocked Tom's magic and said to him sneerily. Dragon out of the hole, Tom ignored it, and the next moment white energy gathered on his wand and shot towards the ground. In the astonished eyes of everyone, a black snake more than 2 meters long appeared on the duel stage. What is this? Seeing Tom use dragon out of the hole to summon a black snake creature, Professor Lockhart was shocked. Raven, this girl, was enough to shock him. Now Tom, who is also from the Padraic family, has such a strong magical talent. Is this still a first-year student? Is the magic world developing too fast and he can't keep up at all? Well, it seems that he has never kept up. Hiss! The black snake stuck out its tongue and rushed towards Raven. At the same time, Tom made a sound that no one could understand, controlling the movements of the black snake. Harry, who was sitting in the audience, was shocked to see that Tom could actually control the black snake. Tom could actually talk to snakes just like himself. And he could understand what Tom was saying to the snakes now. Who was he? He could talk to snakes just like himself, and the aura of the other party made him feel uncomfortable and familiar. Harry stared at Tom, and his heart was in turmoil. Ron, who was standing next to him, didn't know what his friend was thinking at the moment. He was clenching his fists to cheer Tom on. On the stage, the black snake summoned by Tom attacked Raven at lightning speed. Raven was attacked by the black snake and had to give up chasing Tom. She used a spell to release a beam of energy and knock the black snake away. But she didn't expect that Tom was waiting for this opportunity, and the spell was released by him again. The fainting spell flew towards Raven. Raven, who had the upper hand, didn't dodge at all and resisted the fainting spell. Raven's consciousness was dizzy and her body staggered. Raven, who had already cast a protective spell on herself in advance, reduced the damage of the spell and did not faint directly. But she was so angry that she didn't care to hold back. She took a step forward angrily. Very good, Tom, you pissed me off. Snape and Lockhart looked at Raven, who was resisting the fainting spell, and their faces showed incredible expressions. Are these two Padraic children monsters? Bang! Tom's magic energy was knocked away by Raven again. And at the same time he was knocked away by the magic energy in the shape of a crow condensed by Raven. Raven's move was to combine the soul power she had released before with the magic of the Hogwarts world to create a new spell, which she named Soul Crow. She could release her own soul in the form of a huge black crow. This existence is composed of soul and magic power, which can cause certain physical damage, can obtain visual and auditory information, and will cause a certain degree of magic radiation to the surroundings. But at the same time, there are also shortcomings. The biggest weakness is that she is vulnerable to various attacks, and if she is hurt, it will cause her a certain degree of pain, and it will take some time to recover. Now Raven has improved this move by combining the magic of the Hogwarts world. The soul and magic power are blessed by the Hogwarts magic system and released in the form of a wand, which is more stable and more powerful. The people in the audience only saw Raven releasing the magic energy in the form of a black crow, rushing over with a whistle. The soul crow with a large attack range made the students surrounding the audience retreat in horror. After seeing Raven's move, Snape frowned. Shocked by Raven's strength, his only thought at this time was to quickly end a duel between the two, Facing Raven's soul crow, Tom retreated while using the iron armor charm to build an invisible wall between the two. Fine beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. He thought he knew Raven's strength, but he didn't expect the opponent's magic skills to be so strong. At the same time, when Tom tried hard to resist Raven's soul crow, Snape also took action. The wand released dazzling magical energy, and Snape released a magic shield in front of Tom. Raven, Snape shouted at Raven while casting a spell to block her attack. Under the stage, the fighting club was in chaos. Students screamed and ran outside. Oh my god. Get out of here, Harry, Hermione and others were also pushed outside. Mark protected Ginny, who was in a panic. Professor Lockhart under the stage was completely stunned and even forgot to run away. He didn't expect that the fighting competition he organized would end up like this. Raven, who was awakened by Snape, also realized that she had gone too far. She was a little impulsive just now because of Tom. Raven, who realized that she had caused trouble, quickly stopped releasing magic. Seeing Raven stop, Snape's tense heart was relieved. However, looking at the stage destroyed by the magic released by Raven, his face became even worse. Peter still knew nothing about the duel between Raven and Tom. It was not until the evening meal that Raven said shyly, "Principal Dumbledore wants him to go to school," that he knew what happened. Sitting at the dining table, Peter looked at the shy Raven and the calm Tom. Then he looked at Mark and Loki. "I guess Professor Dumbledore wouldn't ask me to go to school for no reason." "Mark, Loki, you two tell me what happened." Peter guessed that it was Raven and Tom, the two naughty kids, who caused the trouble. Mark looked at Raven hesitantly. "Well, Dad, it was the fighting club." Raven and Tom joined the fighting club of Professor Lockhart, the teacher of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, and then, Peter interrupted Mark before he finished. "Then they fought and almost tore down the school, right?" "No," Loki, who was tasting the food, suddenly said. "Dad, it's not that exaggerated. They just almost tore down the Great Hall." Hearing Loki's words, Peter fell into a brief silence. "Loki, this kid, seems to be used to fanning the flames at all times." "Raven, Tom, you'd better tell me what happened in school today." He looked at the two naughty kids with a serious expression. As siblings, shouldn't they help each other and stand together against the outside world? These two kids can actually fight. Seeing Peter's angry look, Raven immediately became uneasy, and Tom's calmness was also a little disrupted. "Sorry, Dad, I should have controlled my emotions." Raven carefully told Peter what happened during the day and yelled. "Oh, so you know your mistake, our eldest lady." After listening, Peter asked her expressionlessly. "I'm sorry, Dad, I know I was wrong." Raven lowered her head and apologized. "Tom is a beginner. His magic level is not as good as yours. Do you know that?" Raven, "I know, Dad." Tom, who had been silent, said to him sincerely, "This matter cannot be simply attributed to Raven. I also made many mistakes in it. You are family now." Raven, Tom, Peter sighed slightly. "No matter what, when you encounter strong enemies or unsolvable setbacks in your future life, you can rely on each other. I know you may think I am nagging, but this is my expectation for you. You are family, not enemies." Raven listened to Peter's words and said with some self-blame, "No, I will never think that you are nagging, Dad. I will correct my mistakes." Tom did not speak. He nodded to indicate that he would correct it too. After dinner, Peter stood in the porch outside the door, holding the railing with both hands and looking at the scenery outside. Diana came out and stood beside him. "Are you troubled by this, Peter?" she asked Peter. "No, I'm just thinking about something else." Peter shook his head and said, "I trust Raven and Tom. Most of the time they know the importance of the matter. I know they didn't mean what happened today. I can't force them to do what I want. They have their own thoughts." Peter turned and said to Diana, "I just hope that some of my actions and thoughts can influence them as much as possible." Diana said nothing. She looked at the ash tree in the yard and reached out to hold Peter's hand on the fence. "You've done a good job, Peter, and you've been influencing them to move in the direction you think they should go," she whispered to comfort Peter. "No, that's not the case, Diana." Chapter 502, Who would keep a diary if they were serious? Tom Riddle, me. Peter shook his head. "Actually, I know that it is they who decide their life paths. I just play a role that is neither important nor unimportant." Peter held Diana's hand tightly and said. Diana asked in confusion, "Why is it important and unimportant?" "Because your children are not just your children, They are born out of life's desire for itself. They come through you, but not from you. Although they are with you, they do not belong to you. You can give them your love, but you cannot give them your ideas, because they have their own ideas. You can place their bodies, but you cannot place their souls, because their souls live in the house of tomorrow, and you cannot visit there, not even in your dreams. Peter slowly said the words that stunned Diana. You can try to be like them, but don't try to make them like you, because life will not go back, nor will it stay in yesterday. Diana listened to Peter's words, and an indescribable emotion surged in her heart. She exhaled deeply, cast her eyes on Peter, gathered her emotions and smiled at him, saying, I believe, Peter, one day, they will understand you. At the same time, in Tom's room, standing in front of the window, he heard the conversation between Peter and Diana through the gap in the glass. He was stunned, and didn't react until Peter and Diana returned to the room. Sitting on the bed, he suddenly felt something soft and his heart was touched. He had always maintained a calm and gentle mood, but he felt a little regretful. He shouldn't have bothered with Raven. At this moment, he had a new understanding of the word family in his heart. His father was right, this is my family, not an orphanage. Although he and Raven have conflicts, they are not enemies, and they cannot be treated the same way as enemies in an orphanage. Taking a deep breath, Tom sat at the desk, opened his diary, and wrote down his thoughts today. I found that I don't know my father well enough. The battle with Raven today made him very angry. I understand my father's anger, and I am also annoyed by it. My father is right, Raven should not be my enemy. Maybe I should handle my relationship with her flexibly in the future. The sound of the pen tip rubbing against a paper rang in the night. Through the battle with Raven today, I realized my own shortcomings. No matter how hard I try to practice magic now, I will never be Raven's opponent. On this road, Raven will always be my mountain, and Loki, they are too difficult for me to overcome now. Tom frowned slightly when he wrote here. He was deeply shocked by today's battle. Maybe I can find some other mysteries about Hogwarts, and use these mysteries to help me reach the Great Road faster. Now I have gained the trust of Harry Potter and Ron. I believe I will get the diary that Ginny received soon. I have a hunch that this diary must be closely related to me. In addition, I heard that there is a secret room in Hogwarts School. Legend has it that only people of Slytherin blood can open the secret room. This secret room may hide some secrets. This may be the secret that can make me powerful. I must find the entrance to this secret room. Tom stopped writing, raised his head, and looked at the night outside with a complicated mood. After a while, he picked up the pen and continued to write on it. Today I accidentally ran into the ghost of Myrtle Warren, the girl who often wandered in the hall and cried. Although she has become a ghost, she still looks unhappy and keeps crying. I have seen her before. I can't understand people who vent their emotions in public. This will be considered miserable and weak. I don't think it is right to show these in front of others. Tears represent weakness in my world. There are no tears and complaints in my world. I believe that a person's will lies in controlling his own emotions and overcoming obstacles without showing weakness. So when I passed by her, I just pretended not to see her and walked past her. He frowned when he wrote here. But she screamed immediately, and then ran away without a trace, saying he's here, that terrible man is back. I don't understand why she said that, but I guess he might have known me before, or maybe she mistook me for another similar person. I need to investigate this matter. The rustling sound of crickets came from outside the window. Tom listened to the crickets and his diary came to an end. The diary in Ginny's hand, the Chamber of Secrets, and Myrtle Warren, these are the things I need to solve. I don't know why, but I always feel that there seems to be some connection between these three things. Closing the notebook, he fell into deep thought. The next day, early in the morning, Peter first took the school bus to Hogwarts and talked to Dumbledore about Raven and Tom. He didn't expect that Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry would also call parents. After talking with Dumbledore for a while and promising him that such things would not happen again, Peter left Hogwarts and returned to the farm. As soon as he entered the farm, he saw Diana and Zatanna walking towards him with a strange look on their faces. What happened? Peter asked the two. Something happened in Nandarbet. Nandarbet. Peter was stunned for a moment when he heard the name, and then he stroked his chin and began to recall. He remembered that the headquarters of the Assassin's League seemed to be nearby. Yes, some people believe that Nandarbet itself is at the crossroads of life and death. The god Rama Kushner is waiting in the dark Styx to guide the righteous people to their final rest. Zatanna said the special thing about Nandarbit. There is a holy place there. It is one of the cores of magic and the energy link of magic. It took practitioners 6,000 years to build it, but it turned to ashes a few minutes ago. Peter was stunned when he heard that the holy place of Nandarbit turned to ashes. Who did it? Wonder Woman said the other person's name, the Spirit Dawn. Peter asked with a puzzled look on his face. Who is the Spirit Dawn? Zatanna explained to Peter. The Spirit Dawn and her husband Raven are from the Atlantis Obsidian Age around 1000 BC. They were born in North America and came from a tribe that later became the Apache tribe. Little is known about Dawn's early life, and it is not clear whether her control of mysterious powers is acquired or innate. Zatanna also knew little about this mysterious wizard. She had only heard stories about him from several magic colleagues. The Spirit Dawn once told a story about her when she was 13 years old. She was nicknamed Goat. She was very different from other girls in the tribe, and as she grew up, she attracted the attention of the tribal leader known as Big Father. Then her family sold her to the leader, but it ended badly. Later, she met her husband Raven, and she thought Raven was a kindred spirit. The two later fell in love and burned down the chief's house. Zatanna guessed to Peter, a totem of the tribe in the Spirit Dawn seems to be the source of her power, but it's just a legend. I don't know if it's true or not. Peter nodded after listening. It turned out to be the same type of totem power as the female fox. The Spirit Dawn turned into the out-of-control appearance before Diana, emitting strong light all over her body, and a half-moon symbol appeared on her forehead. Under the terrible power, she destroyed the sanctuary. Zatanna said that the Spirit Dawn was the third person chosen by Hecate after Witchfire and Diana. So, Peter pondered and asked the two, when the Spirit Dawn was young, Hecate also branded a symbol on her forehead. Diana touched her forehead. It's very likely. Well, let's go and take a look. Peter asked the two to go with him to Nandarbit. Nandarbit, the Holy Land. At this time, the Holy Land had turned into ashes. 10 minutes ago, the Spirit Dawn was emitting strong light all over her body. Black blood flowed from her eyes, and she was suspended above the Holy Land. Her eyes shot out a torrent of terrifying energy and shot it at the Holy Land. Flames and explosions instantly swept towards the thousands of years old building. Boom, the building collapsed and flames rose. The Spirit Dawn's eyes shot out powerful magical energy, destroying wantonly. She knew what she was doing. Although she shouted all the spells she knew to control her body, she failed in the end. She could not resist the power of Hecate. Run, with a ferocious expression, she used all her strength to say this sentence, so that the dead in the Holy Land would run away quickly. But the dead of Nandarbit have been guarding the gate to the afterlife for generations. For a long time, they have been living with death for a long time and have gained incredible power from it. The souls of the dead can leave their bodies and attack the god Dawn in the air. Countless souls flew towards her. The souls of the dead penetrated her body and tried to control Dawn. Feeling threatened, the god Dawn, who was controlled by Hecate, exuded a destructive energy. The souls of the dead who were affected were instantly annihilated. After killing the dead guard in the sanctuary, the god Dawn continued to destroy other areas of Nandarbit. The deafening sound of boom continued to sound. The whole city began to step on the edge of destruction. A few minutes later, whoosh! A figure suddenly appeared on the ground, and then Zatanna and Wonder Woman appeared behind Peter. Hecate, the moment Peter appeared, he shouted to the god Dawn in the sky, "Stop!" Chapter 503, Dark Wonder Woman. Peter Patrick, the Spirit Dawn, who was possessed by the witch, had a strong light in his eyes. "It's surprising that the salmon didn't kill you." The Spirit Dawn stood in the sky and looked at Peter and his group. "But your luck ends here. You snatched Diana from me. Do you think I can let you go easily?" Before he finished speaking, there was a boom sound, and the Spirit Dawn's eyes released powerful magic energy and rushed towards Peter. Peter immediately hugged Zatanna with one hand to dodge the opponent's attack. Diana jumped back and drew out her Vulcan sword. She could clearly feel that this powerful magic energy had the destructive power of the world-destroying level, and even Peter might not be able to resist it. "You can't stop me. I will definitely take Ramakrishna's life today. Even you, Peter Patrick, can't stop me." After saying this, the Spirit Dawn released more powerful energy with both hands and rushed towards Peter. Peter released a beam of divine energy with his backhand, which collided with the energy released by the Spirit Dawn. Amid the explosion, Peter, who was fighting with Zatanna in his arms, lowered his head and asked her with a slightly red face, "Who is Ramakrishna?" "She is the goddess of this sanctuary, and the god worshipped by the monks in the sanctuary. The dead was created by her, Zatanna quickly explained to Peter, Rama is the soul of the universe, the god of the balance of good and evil and cause and effect. She is the existence and non-existence here. Hecate's purpose is to kill the god Rama who is here. She told Peter her guess. She may want to seize the power of the god Rama. While Zatanna was speaking, a golden bust of a beautiful woman appeared in the sanctuary. Looking at the shadow that suddenly appeared in the air, Peter guessed that she was the god Rama that Zatanna mentioned. While Diana was resisting the spirit Dorn, Peter held Zatanna and flew to the goddess Ramakushnar. You have to leave here, Ramakushnar. Goddess Ramakushnar looked hesitant, lowered her head slightly and looked at Peter standing in the air, and said in an ethereal voice, You want me to escape from my home? Escape from Nandarbit? Peter didn't know the character and preferences of this Indian goddess, but he still tried to persuade her. There are only bricks and dust left here. You can see these things everywhere. Your home can be rebuilt, but if Hecate kills you, all of this will be meaningless. Zatanna also persuaded her, We must leave here. Hecate's target is you, goddess. She wants to gain more power here. Listening to Peter and the others, Ramakushnar's huge shadow looked at the monks who had died on the ground. My monks, they have lost their hosts. I can use their bodies. Ramakushnar's shadow radiated golden light, and the powerful golden energy split into several strands and entered the bodies of the monks who fell to the ground. She dispersed her energy body into the bodies of several monks below. Injected with the energy of the god Rama, these monks immediately stood up. At the same time, Constantine and his group also came over. Along with her came the dead man Boston Brand, the guerrilla detective. The dead man Boston Brand was resurrected by the goddess Ramakushnar and then became a new life form. After seeing his goddess, he immediately flew to the monks possessed by her. Goddess Ramakushnar, are you okay? Ramakushnar possessed more than a dozen monks at the same time. More than a dozen pairs of eyes shot out golden light. She did not answer the dead man, but looked at the spirit Orn and asked, Why do you want to destroy me? I, Ramakushnar, have guarded the boundary between life and death for generations. The goddess Ramakushnar asked the spirit Orn who is possessed by Hecate, I have never interfered in your affairs. I only guide the dead to eternal peace. Why do you attack me? The spirit Orn heard the words of the goddess Rama and stopped attacking Diana. The true form of Hecate behind her was revealed. The entity of the Trinity goddess appeared in midair. The huge figure of the other party brought a strong sense of oppression to everyone present. You did a terrible job, sister. The goddess Hecate, who appeared, bowed her head and said to her, Humanity is on the verge of destruction. Magic has become a burden. I want to burn it and replace it with something better. Facing Hecate's arrogant speech, Ramakushnar also became angry. You are in my domain. Do you think you can do whatever you want? Hecate looked at her coldly. I am neither a dead person nor a living person. Your power is useless in front of me. As soon as the voice fell, she controlled the god Dorn to attack Ramakushnar. Peter thought he could take this Indian goddess away quickly, but he didn't expect that the goddess would go crazy and fight Hecate again. Sighing, Peter had to stand up and hand Zatanna to Constantine and the guerrilla detective who came, and then condensed silver energy in his hands and attacked Hecate. At the same time, the power of the ruby was activated, and a red energy emitted a dazzling light in his hands. Hecate in front of him should be the most powerful opponent he has ever faced. Even Thanos, who has collected all 5 gems, has never given him such a suffocating pressure. As the ancestor of all magic, this woman's strength is not ordinary. Facing Peter's attack, the god Dorn, who crushed the energy of the goddess Ramakushnar with one blow, rushed towards Peter with a whoosh. The god Dorn, who was emitting strong light all over her body and had black blood in her eyes, had the witch power of Hecate in her body. Peter dared not underestimate her strength. Thor's hammer was summoned into his hand, and a thunder fell down, knocking the god Dorn away. It fell to the ground with a boom, and her eyes instantly shot out purple energy that burned the air, and it rushed towards Peter with a bang. Constantine, who was next to him, watched the battle between the two and complained, Great, our lives are now handed over to a Greek demigod and a farmer who is more mysterious and complicated than a god. On the other side, Zatanna faced the goddess Hecate who revealed her true form. Holding the Vulcan sword, she stood in front of Hecate. What do you want to do? Diana glared at her and asked. Hecate looked down at her. Diana, my dear child, you carry a part of my soul in you. You and your sisters, my descendants, my warriors, my witch imprints, you will create a beautiful world, but now, I am a little tired of activating your games one by one, Witchfire, and then you, the spirit Dorn, You are all my children, you are my branded child, Diana, you are my cursed witch." As soon as Hecate finished speaking, purple energy suddenly burst out from her body. The energy surging like a tide made Diana unable to avoid it and directly surrounded her. Diana, seeing Diana covered by Hecate's energy, Zatanna shouted anxiously. Peter also noticed Diana's situation. He immediately summoned countless thunders with both hands and attacked the spirit horn in the air. At the same time, he held the ruby, as if using the power gem. With a boom, a red energy came out of the ruby, hitting the spirit horn and knocking it out. After repelling the spirit horn, Peter activated his super speed and moved to Diana. Diana, who was kneeling on the ground, had her skin turned black, her face showed terrible wrinkles, her hair turned white, and a black sticky breath continued to surge from her body. Diana opened her mouth and showed a terrifying smile on her face, and fixed her eyes on Peter, who frowned. "Kill them, Diana." At the same time, Raven at Hogwarts School felt a sense of uneasiness in her heart. Her soul seemed to have an uncontrollable tremor. She always felt that something bad was about to happen. Although she didn't know why she had this feeling, she believed that it was not groundless. She had this feeling after her father disappeared in Gotham last time. On the podium, Professor Lockhart was still bragging about his experience in fighting vampires. After hesitating for a moment, she raised her hand. "Professor Lockhart, I suddenly have something urgent to do. Sorry, I have to leave for a while." Without waiting for Lockhart's response, Raven left the classroom and walked quickly outside. Lockhart was stunned for a moment and wanted to reach out to stop him. But thinking of his performance in the fighting club yesterday, he had to put his hand down and said to the students below angrily, "I think Miss Padraic must have encountered an emergency. It's okay. I have always been reasonable." At the same time as Raven left, Tom also had a vague discomfort in his heart that he couldn't suppress. Raven has a part of Peter's soul in her body, and Tom's soul is in Peter's body, so he can also communicate with Peter in a certain sense like Raven. "I know the holiday is coming, but I need you to hand in the list of people who will stay in school." Professor McGonagall on the podium looked at the Gryffindor and Ravenclaw students below. "But I have to say in advance that you need your parents' permission if you want to stay." "Sorry, Professor McGonagall, I want to go out for a while." Tom suddenly raised his hand and said to Professor McGonagall. Hearing Tom's voice, Ginny and Mark looked at him with doubt. Professor McGonagall's eyebrows moved. "Is it important?" "Mr. Padraic, you know the rules. No one is allowed to leave the classroom before the class is over." "It's very important, Professor McGonagall, so important that all the courses are insignificant compared to it." Chapter 504 Loki's Curiosity, the Distant Girl. Raven, with a frown on her face, was walking quickly towards the school bus parked outside the school. Unexpectedly, she ran into Tom, who was also going back to the farm, just after she walked out of the school gate. "Do you want to go back too, Tom?" Raven asked him in confusion. Although she was still very upset with Tom, she tried not to show it. She had decided that she would not openly punish Tom like she did in the fighting club. Instead, she was ready to compete with Tom in other aspects to prove herself to her father. For example, the upcoming Quidditch competition, and the ownership of the House Cup at the end of the year. These were all honors that she must win. "Yes, I feel a little uneasy," Tom frowned slightly and said with a heavy heart. "This may be related to my father. I must go back as soon as possible." As he was talking, he heard footsteps coming from behind. Looking back, he found that Mark and Loki also walked out of the classroom. Mark also felt something was wrong, and after seeing Tom leave, he also left the classroom. Loki, as the most leisurely person in the group of four, often transformed into a teacher and wandered around the school. "I just spotted Raven in the library, so I came to see what was going on." "Very good." Looking at Loki and Mark, Raven shrugged her shoulders. "It seems that we have reached an agreement on going back." "Loki, are you going back too?" Loki said to her. "I guess you must have something important to do and must rush back, so I will certainly not stay here and pretend nothing happened. I saw you disguised as Professor Lockhart and went to the Forbidden Forest in the morning." "Loki." Raven walked towards the car and said to Loki, "If there is anyone who wants to stay here and doesn't want to go home, it should be you." After complaining about Loki, Raven sat down. "No, actually, I just satisfy my curiosity occasionally," Loki said, got on the car and sat with Mark. The school bus started quickly and drove towards the farm. At the same time, Maryland. The swamp monster encountered the witch sent by Hecate and controlled by her. Black Orchid, a superhero covered in a purple-red uniform, has a half-moon symbol flashing on his forehead, and emits strong light all over his body, wantonly destroying the plants in the swamp. Black Orchid's original name is Alva Garcia, and her origin has always been a mystery. It is said that she was born from the hybridization of humans and plants, and has a close connection with nature. When the swamp monster saw that Black Orchid was controlled by Hecate, he immediately came out to stop him. The tall swamp monster, whose body is covered with vines and mud, was originally named Alec Holland. He was originally a scientist. When he was conducting secret experiments in the swamp, he was assassinated and fell from the boat into the swamp, causing his body to merge with the swamp and become a half-human, half-plant monster. Of course, Alec Holland is not equal to the swamp monster. There is more than one generation of swamp monsters, and there were many generations before Alec Holland. The mission of each generation of swamp monsters is to protect the natural environment and ecological balance, and fight against the evil forces that threaten the natural world. At this time, the swamp monster felt a warning from nature. While fighting the Black Orchid, he pushed his roots deep into the ground and found that the green of all things had suffered a fatal blow and was gradually dying. The so-called green of all things is an extremely mysterious natural force. In the DC world, green is an elemental force that is related to all forms of plant life. At the same time, green is also a cosmic energy that gives vitality to all plant life. When an animal, including humans, dies in flames and merges with the earth, it becomes the protector, incarnation, of plant life. This green elemental energy gradually forms a mysterious natural force, the green of all things, and the swamp monster also becomes one of the hosts of the green of all things. At this time, he was horrified to find that the green of all things was dying. Seeing the instigator of everything, the Black Orchid, the angry swamp monster no longer held back. Unexpectedly, the Black Orchid, who was possessed by Hecate, suddenly returned to its original state when he was about to attack. The half-moon mark on her forehead disappeared, and the strong light emanating from her body slowly extinguished. The swamp monster naturally would not miss this opportunity, controlling the vines, grabbing her hands and tying them up. Black Orchid, who had regained her sanity, was tied up by the swamp monster and couldn't breathe. She struggled and shouted to the swamp monster, "Please, stop it. This is not my fault. It was not me who did it. It was Hecate who did it. I know it was Hecate who did it, but you, Black Orchid, you almost destroyed the entire green of all things. The pain of your flesh is nothing compared to the pain of nature and the pain of magic in this world." The calmed-down swamp monster said that he would punish Black Orchid, but he still put her down. Ahem, coughing and kneeling on the ground, Black Orchid raised her head and panted slightly, and said to the swamp monster, "I can feel that Hecate suddenly took away my power. She seems to have concentrated all her power on one of the hosts. Where is it? Can you feel it?" the swamp monster asked her. "I can vaguely feel the location." When the swamp monster and Black Orchid arrived in Nandarbit, what they saw was Diana, who was surrounded by darkness and exuded a powerful pressure. At this time, the power of the god Dorn was also taken away by Hecate. The power of the witch's mark was all concentrated on Diana's body. The weak Dorn was supported by Zatanna and stood away from Diana. Damn it, Constantine couldn't help cursing as he saw the power emanating from Diana's body, which seemed to be able to turn him into ashes in a blink of an eye. "Is he Peter Patrick?" Looking at the person standing in the front, facing Diana and Hecate, the swamp monster asked Constantine. When the magic world discussed how to deal with this magic crisis, he had heard the wizard child talk about the existence of Peter. "Yes, it's him. Now we have to rely on this legendary farmer who is not a magician," Constantine complained on the side. Feeling the collapse of the surrounding buildings, he then took out a cigarette. "Now I know why Hecate attacked here," the dead man asked puzzledly. "Why? She wants to use her magic to replace the two pillars of magic, the power of life and death in the sanctuary, and the power of nature. Both belong to her. She has long been ready to rewrite the book of magic with her own pen." Constantine saw the swamp monster appear and quickly figured out Hecate's purpose. If she completely shatters the third pillar, the entire system will completely collapse. If I guess correctly, her third target is Mount Olympus. The guerrilla detective narrowed his eyes. "It seems that we have to fight to the death. Now that Wonder Woman has gathered all the witches, she will not be defeated so easily." On the other side, Peter faced Diana, who was emitting black air and whose momentum was countless times stronger than before, and tried to wake her up. "Diana, Diana, wake up, Diana, whose consciousness fell into darkness, slowly opened her eyes. In the boundless void, she saw a young girl standing in front of her. "Who are you? Where am I?" Diana asked, holding her aching forehead. "You know the answer, sister. When you wake up, you will know. I am Hecate," the girl told her name. "If you want to live, listen carefully, Sister Diana." In the pure white void, the girl said to her, "We don't have much time, sister. You are involved in a huge drama. You must figure out the whole story." Diana stroked her forehead. She guessed that this should be her spiritual world. The girl who called herself Hecate said to her, "In the beginning, there was magic. At that time, she was still very primitive, like a light of endless possibilities, growing fuller and fuller, surrounding the unformed multiverse. Thousands of years later, some people called that space the realm of the gods, but this story was long before the birth of the gods." The girl drew casually, and the light in the universe formed a girl with a half-moon symbol on her forehead. The amazing cosmic light created a body for herself. She wanted to play in the pure kingdom where everything is true. After a pause, she continued, "It didn't take long for the girl to feel that she was not alone in the darkness. Behind the realm of the gods, there was an even darker place, connected to an even darker multiverse. Just as she was born in the light, that existence was born in the darkness, reversed from each other, and he was eyeing her covetously." Diana listened carefully to the other party's story. Out of fear, she created a barrier under her feet to isolate the other party. She didn't want her beautiful and lovely country to be tainted by fear. In order to forget this terrifying creature, she began to visit the Earth, the center of this new multiverse, and observe the growth of mankind. Diana listened to this and asked, "She is you, right?" The girl did not answer, but continued, "She will give humans a touch of magic, so that they will be surprised by the possibilities of the world around them." They gave her a name, which means distant in their primitive language, because they believe that she lives on the moon. They call her Hecate. Hearing this, Diana fell silent. After that, as the people's tribe grew, their beliefs began to become more perfect and began to show a more rigorous form. All the gods of the system wanted to win her favor. They all believed that she was the one described in the creation god. Chapter 505 Voldemort's Father Protection Spell. Let me put it this way, Sister Diana. Hecate is changing. She needs to mature for the new situation. She believes that she has the responsibility to take on the new situation of magic and faith. As the girl spoke, a middle-aged woman walked out of the void. The girl's side faded, and the mother's side came to the top. After a pause, she looked at Diana with sadness in her eyes. But when the gods found out that she was so special and powerful, they had their own ideas. They never really regarded her as one of them, and her generous rewards to her believers aroused the greed and anger of humans. This group of people are a group of humans in ancient times, who were later called pioneers, but in fact, they were her first group of believers. The girl casually created a picture of Hecate being imprisoned and secretly crying. They imprisoned the gods with a magic circle when the witch god descended. They longed to obtain the most fundamental power of the witch god. They wanted to obtain the original magic power, but in the end, they failed. Although all this was very tragic, she did not give up hope. She thought someone would rescue her, but what she waited for was indeed a more heartbreaking betrayal. Zeus came to tell the imprisoned her husband Hades was going to marry Persephone, and they were about to get married. She was no longer welcome here, and they wanted her to leave. Diana was slightly stunned when she heard Persephone's name. Now this queen of the underworld cooks and does housework on Peter's farm every day. It is completely impossible to see that she used to compete with Hecate for her husband. When she was completely heartbroken, her endless rage completely devoured her reason. She broke through the barrier between the universes. In order to avenge the betrayers, she attracted a ray of magic from the darkness. This is the origin of magic on Earth. The pioneers among humans could not bear the power of this black magic, so they decided to make it into a helmet, the helmet of destiny. Sighing slightly, she looked at Diana and said slowly, "The power of darkness has gradually leaked out, and more people have mastered these magics, and she has completely escaped because she awakened her last phase, hatred. She sealed her original magical power in the 5 girls. She looks forward to changing everything one day." After telling the story of Hecate, the girl held Diana's hand. "This is the spiritual boundary of the multiverse. In the original darkness, although she occupied your body, your spirit came here. You are different from us. We are all trapped here." As the girl spoke, the middle-aged woman walked in front of Diana and the two faced her. "Two of our personalities are trapped here, the girl and the mother. Now the one controlling her is the old woman. She is panting anxiously, waiting for the witch hour to ring. Then she will be able to create a new magic system that will no longer be able to harm him. The two held Diana's hands. Diana, you were chosen because she saw the unruly nature of a girl in you. The old woman is right. There is a need to reset the magic world. Many ages ago, it was led onto a dark path, which led the entire system to terror. But what replaces this fear must not be hatred. It must be above it and must be more unique. Diana listened to the two people's words, was slightly stunned for a moment, and then looked down at her feet. The scene of Nandarbit was projected under her feet. Her body, occupied by Hecate, had already launched an attack on Peter. The magic power released by myself was so powerful that it seemed to tremble in the space. Peter used the energy of the gods to summon thunder to attack, and used the power released by the ruby to resist the energy she released. Although he barely held on, Diana could clearly see that Peter would not hold on for long. The ground made a boom explosion sound, and the entire Nandarbit was heading towards destruction. No, Peter. After seeing herself attacking Peter, Diana frowned and asked the other party, please, sisters, tell me what to do. The girl said to her, listen to your heart, listen to your best self, don't succumb to the darkness, don't become a resentful woman. The two of them drew a complex graphic symbol on her forehead. Remember, as long as your heart is full of hot feelings, you will not be trapped by it. Nandarbit. Boom. Diana, with magical energy released from her eyes, emitting strong light all over her body and black blood flowing in her eyes, resisted the divine energy released by Peter. She easily dispelled the energy and moved in front of Peter under the control of Hecate, preparing to attack him. But the next second, Diana suddenly opened her eyes. Taking a deep breath, Diana, whose consciousness returned to her body, grabbed Peter's hand. Peter was about to attack, but he didn't expect the other party to wake up. He was stunned. Diana? Is it really you? Diana, who was emitting strong light and pressure, smiled at Peter. It's me, Peter. Everything still looks so desperate. The magic fire is still burning in my body, but the work is not done yet, she said to Peter. Let me talk to her. This battle will not be won by violence. Diana separated the hand holding Peter, took a deep breath and half knelt on the ground, looking at Hecate in the air in the image of a resentful woman. Great Witch Mother Hecate, I beg you to listen to your daughter's voice. Hecate was stunned after hearing this, and looked at her in confusion. What tricks are you playing? This is not a trick. I asked to talk to you. Diana was talking, and at this time, Raven and the other four who returned from Hogwarts, as well as Azu and Clark, Star-Lord, Kara and Rhea finally arrived here. After knowing that Peter might be in danger, almost the entire Padrick family rushed over. Raven looked at Diana kneeling on the ground, and touched her forehead with sweat in confusion. She didn't quite understand what happened at the scene. But after seeing that Peter was safe, she finally let go of the worry she had been holding. Goddess, I understand the pain in your heart. This world is so cruel to beautiful things, and it has turned them into cold-blooded and ruthless. I think no one will not take your personal experience. Diana raised her head, and said to Hecate with black blood in her eyes, but this is not the solution. Release your control and use your unparalleled power to heal the magic. Don't destroy it, don't change it. Hecate listened to Diana's words and glared at her. Dream. I won't give in. Forever. Diana lowered her head. I beg you, you have changed your appearance before, you must do it again, please. Hecate hesitated for a moment, and finally shook her head. No, I can't go back. Amazon, I have done this, I can only do this. Seeing that she couldn't convince the other party, Diana's expression was a little bitter. It seems that this is the only way to do it? Snap, just as Diana hesitated, a pair of hands grabbed her arms. Get up, Diana. Looking up, Diana saw Peter reaching out his hand to her. Some things can only be solved by violence. We have no choice. Peter shook his head and said to her. Diana was stunned for a moment, and just as she was about to speak, Peter had already launched an attack on Hecate. Ruby released a straight beam of light in the air and attacked Hecate. Seeing his father attack, Zu immediately moved. He had long wanted to attack the old woman in front of him who disgusted him. With a bang, Zu crushed the ground under his feet and flew towards the other party. Hecate casually released a magical energy and knocked Zu away. Zu, who had just taken off, fell to the ground in an instant. Kara released a hot gaze from her eyes and shot it towards the other party's body. As the ancestor of magic, Hecate simply condensed a ball of black energy to isolate Kara and Rhea's attacks. The lightning lingering around her body spread in all directions. A deafening sound resounded in Nandarbut. In order to avoid the fierce impact, Zatanna and others had to flee as far as possible. Do you think you can defeat me? Peter Patrick, you are just seeking death in vain. Even if you have the magic weapon of the god of sleep, you can't resist me. Boom. The protruding peaks were shattered by the impact of the magic she released, and the ground shook violently. Facing the magic released by Hecate, Peter held the ruby with both hands, the power of the gods lingering in his hands, and released a mixed impact of red and silver energy towards the opponent with an unchanged expression. The energy with a destructive breath tore the air and shook the hearts of the swamp monster and others in the distance. Facing Peter's big move, Hecate also became serious. She condensed her bright magic energy in her right hand and rushed towards Peter with a boom. The two energies that burned the air and cut through the space collided with each other. With a deafening bang, everything around them was turned into dust. The two energies met in the air and collided with each other. Peter exerted all his strength, but was still slowly retreated by the impact of the magic power released by the opponent. Hecate exuded a terrifying and coercive magic power, suppressing Peter to disadvantage. Seeing that Peter was being suppressed, Tom was the first to move. Expedia Patronum, calling the gods, with his angry shout, a dazzling white light emanated from his magic wand. The white smoke quickly condensed into a substantial existence. In the astonished eyes of the crowd, a big snake was condensed in the white magic. The dazzling white light emitting powerful magic rushed towards the energy released by Hecate as fast as the sun, and everything along the way was crushed. The big snake turned into a roaring beast and rushed towards the magic energy released by Hecate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, Forefathers Guarding Animals. What is this? Constantine and his party were all stunned when they saw Tom's magic create a silver white snake that turned into a shield to resist the magic energy coming from Hecate. The magic energy released by Hecate swept towards Peter, and everything along the way was crushed. The powerful pressure was so strong that even they could feel the terrible power from a distance. Everyone thought Peter would not be able to hold on, but Tom suddenly released magic and joined the battlefield with his father to resist the attack of Hecate. In the center of the battlefield, Tom gritted his teeth, with veins on his forehead, and recalled the happy time he had spent with Peter. He concentrated his mind and released Expecto Patronus. The silver-white giant snake he released formed a powerful energy shield, and together with Peter's energy, they resisted Hecate's attack. Peter, who was standing next to him, was completely shocked when he saw Tom release Expecto Patronus. As far as he knew, the Patronus charm was one of the most powerful and oldest defensive spells in the wizarding world, and it was also the most famous defensive spell, and it was extremely difficult to successfully cast the Patronus charm. The purpose of the Patronus charm is to produce a silver-white Patronus in the form of an animal. The Patronus will not show its exact shape until the spell is successfully cast. It is a symbol of the inner heart and a very profound magic. When casting this spell, the wizard needs to concentrate, think about the happiest thing in his heart, and recite Expecto Patronus to summon his own Patronus to let it take the attack on his behalf or help him do things. Did Tom master this high-level magic so quickly? Voldemort, who was filled with darkness and ambition in his previous life and never knew how to love, can now release the Patronus charm that can only be cast with love. The Patronus advocates happiness, light and the hope of living. Each Patronus is unique because everyone's personality and inner world are different, and the emotions expressed are also different. Now that Tom can release the Patronus charm, it means that he is completely different from his other self in his previous life. Being able to feel love and happiness shows that this kid's soul is not isolated from love because of the influence of the love potion. Turning his head, Peter looked at the giant snake released by Tom to resist the energy impact with mixed feelings. Fortunately, Tom's Patronus is not a stag. Although he has never heard of Voldemort having a Patronus, he has heard someone analyze in his previous life that Voldemort's Patronus should be a stag. Because Voldemort is happiest when he catches Harry Potter, Harry Potter's Patronus is a stag. On the other side, Azu was stunned when he saw Tom release a giant snake to resist Hecate's energy attack. He didn't expect that this kid who had just arrived had such a skill. Raven saw the Patronus released by Tom, and her face showed an incredible expression. She had read Dark Power, a guide to self-defense written by Quentin Goblin. This book introduces this kind of spell in the book about dark magic defense spells and mysterious creatures. She didn't expect Tom to be able to release such a powerful spell. This is a spell that she hasn't mastered yet. No. Now is not the time to think about these things. Raven reacted quickly, and a feeling of not giving up surged up in her heart. Standing on the left of Peter, she took out her wand with a firm expression. Since Tom could do it, she could do it too. Closing her eyes and taking a deep breath, Raven glanced at Tom, who was gritting his teeth and persisting. Raven raised her wand, concentrated all her energy, and began to recall the happy times she had in her mind. From her father taking her to watch My Little Pony to her father making a fuss in the underworld for her. The good memories of the past gradually appeared in her mind, and the surging emotions surged like a tide. The time she spent with her father, all the good things, in order to protect her father who she always cherished, in order to protect her father and the farm from being harmed, she would give everything for it. A strong feeling of protection burst out in her heart, and the silver-white magic energy accumulated at the top of the wand. Expedia Patronum, calling the Guardian, as Raven shouted loudly, the silver-white magic energy rushed towards Hecate. In the astonished eyes of the crowd, a raven formed by magic condensed, whistling and flying towards Hecate. The Patronus released by Raven was more powerful than Tom's. The silver-white raven whistled and flew over, forming a solid shield to resist the impact of Hecate's magic. The ground was violently shaken, and the only remaining buildings in Nandarbit were shaken and collapsed under the influence of this force. The silver-white raven released a fierce magic light, and all the existing things around were affected. A deafening boom sounded, and the energy shield formed by the raven and the giant snake did not retreat in the confrontation with Hecate. The Patronus charm, which was born out of Raven's strong desire to protect her father, exerted a power that made Hecate fall into disbelief. Feeling the magic released by the father and son together, and the collision with the magic energy she wielded, she showed a shocked expression on her face. What is this? She had never seen the magic released by Raven and Tom. It seemed to be a strong emotional force bursting from the heart, detached from the existence of the magic system she controlled. On the other side, the dozen monks possessed by the goddess Ramakrishna looked at the beautiful and powerful guardian animals in amazement. The silver-white animal, in the air bombarded by magic energy, emitted a soft and beautiful light, which attracted her eyes and made her unable to move away. What kind of magic is that? Goddess, the dead man asked the goddess Rama curiously. I don't know, but I can feel that it is a kind of emotional power, Rama murmured in a low voice. This is a kind of emotional power bursting, a positive and active power, which can compete with a negative and dark power. I can feel the emotional power of protection and happiness in it. Incredible. I have never seen such magic. Seeing Raven and Tom join in, Peter's pressure was greatly relieved. On the other side, Loki also took out his wand. Come with me, Mark. Loki asked Mark to follow him to his father. The stunned Mark reacted and hurriedly followed Loki. Although he spent most of his time pretending to be a teacher at Hogwarts, Loki's research on the dark arts was no worse than Tom and Raven. He had studied the school library and even the magic books that students were forbidden to borrow. Knowing that Raven and Tom were using the Patronus spell, Loki decided to release the Patronus to fight Hecate together. Now, listen to me, Mark. The energy impact of the magic caused a deafening sound at the scene, so Loki could only shout at the other party, now I will teach you the Patronus spell. It is a positive and powerful magic, and it is also the most powerful defensive magic. Now close your eyes, concentrate your mind, recall the happy things in the past, immerse yourself in happiness, point your wand at the enemy, and recite the spell. Mark held the wand nervously, and he looked at Raven and Tom who were holding their wands and fighting side by side with their father. He roughly guessed at what Loki taught him was the magic that the two of them were using now. He didn't know if he could do it like his brothers and sisters. But if he could not protect his father and resist Hecate, he would not only lose his father, but also all the beautiful things he valued now would disappear. He bit his lower lip nervously, ignoring the damage caused by the gravel that was splashed on his body by the magic energy, and tried to calm himself down. Recalling the happy moments he had, he was firm in his inner feelings. If Raven and the others could do it, he could do it too. Scenes of the time he spent with his father flashed through his mind, and the surging emotional power surged in Mark's body. I'm ready, brother, now. Loki raised his wand and shouted loudly in the burst of magic energy, Expedia Patronum, Expedia Patronum. Mark raised his wand as Loki raised it, and two voices pierced the air one after the other and echoed in the battlefield. The silver-white magic energy condensed at the tip of the wand, and Loki's patron saint, a cat, appeared in the air. Under Loki's control, the huge cat with horns on its head rushed towards Hecate with a roar. At the same time, Mark's patroness was also summoned by him. Under the burst of strong emotional power, the silver-white magic energy condensed into a tall horse. The horse roared and rushed towards the torrent of magic released by Hecate in the gorgeous magic energy. The two newly joined animals, together with Raven's raven and Tom's giant snake, formed a silver-white energy shield. More dazzling light hit Nandarbit. With the blessing of the patroness spell of his 4 children, Peter finally overwhelmed Hecate with the energy released. In the silver-white magic energy, he was in the patroness spell space constructed by the 4 people, and the warm magic filled with strong emotional power moistened his body. Ah, Peter, holding the ruby tightly and gritting his teeth, shouted angrily, and even more violent energy burst out. Boom! Amid the rumbling explosion, Peter directly controlled the magic torrent and rushed towards Hecate. Hecate thought she could suppress Peter, but she didn't expect that the sudden joining of the 4 naughty kids would suddenly change the situation on the battlefield. With unbelievable eyes, she failed to resist the wave and watched the magic energy rush towards her. No. Chapter 507, The God in Charge of Children. Under the blessing of the patroness spell of Raven and the other 4, Peter held the ruby and pushed the magic torrent towards Hecate. Hecate, whose face was full of disbelief, was instantly submerged by the magic energy. The boom explosion resounded in Nandarbit, and the ground shook violently as if there was an earthquake. Zatanna, Swamp Thing and others covered their eyes with their hands. After the smoke and dust at the scene dissipated, Black Orchid raised her eyes and looked at Raven and the other 4 who were holding their wands in disbelief. The 4 held their wands and panted slightly. At the other end of the battlefield, Hecate had fallen to the ground. Endless pain attacked her whole body. She was injured by Peter and Raven's patroness spell. There was a problem with the flow of magic in her body, making her unable to stand up for a short time. Diana, who was emitting strong light, looked at the injured Hecate in astonishment in the air. She didn't expect that Peter and his children would actually defeat Hecate. And what kind of magic that gave her a warm and beautiful feeling was it? Can magic also have temperature? Crack! Crack! Peter slowly walked to the fallen Hecate on the ground. You lose, Witch Mother. Peter looked down at her and said. Hecate's eyes revealed resentment and unwillingness. What kind of magic did you and your children release? That is magic that does not belong to this world. Peter glanced at Raven and the other 3, and said to him with mixed feelings, You are right, that is magic that does not belong to this world. You hope to destroy the magic and then create a new world. Magic does need to be reset, but it should not be replaced by fear. The fear you expect cannot replace the magic of this world. What should replace it should be more advanced in it, which should be love. Hecate looked at Peter in astonishment. What did you say? The magic that my child released on you just now is called the patroness spell. Only when you have a firm protective emotion and happy memories in your heart, and use these feelings of faith and happy memories as a medium, can you release this protective spell. No, impossible. Hecate looked at Peter in shock. I have never felt this kind of magic. It was not born in the realm of the gods, and I have never seen it in the isolated darkness. Of course you haven't seen it, because it never relies on external media, but always uses one's own inner emotions as a medium. Peter said to her coldly, Emotion and love are the most powerful aspects of this magic. It can overcome everything. Looking down at Hecate, who was in shock, Peter said to her, Since you have given up the magic that you have instilled into this world, then let this emotional magic replace your magic, and let love replace fear. Peter said that he wanted to replace Hecate's magic power with the magic system of the Hogwarts world. Hearing Peter's words, Hecate's expression changed. Although she was full of resentment in her heart, she wanted to pour her hatred on the whole world and reshape the magic system of this world. But in her heart, she still regarded this world as a back garden for her to roam. Now hearing that the magic used by Peter's children was trying to replace her magic system, she panicked. What she feared was being forgotten. If all the magicians in the world used the magic that Peter said, it would not take long for everyone to forget her. Although she could stop Peter, once the other party really made up his mind to do so, it would definitely cause her considerable trouble. Witch Mother Hecate? At some point, Diana stood in front of Hecate. I ask you to release your control. Now, Peter has proved his power to you. He has magic from another world. If you don't agree, We can only fight you with all our determination to sacrifice everything." Diana knelt on one knee in front of Hecate again. "By then, all wizards in the magic world will have mastered Peter's magic system. I think it will be a protracted war, and your magic will also decline. We don't want to see this result." Hearing Diana's threat, Hecate's face turned ugly. But she didn't get angry, but looked at Peter and Raven. After a while, she stood up and said to Diana, "You are such a stubborn child, Diana. I will retreat and release the control of the magic of this world." Hecate agreed to give up her plan to make trouble. If she continued to insist, not only would all wizards be enemies with her, they would even master Peter Patrick's magic and gradually abandon her. That was what she feared the most. Now if she agreed to retreat and let the magic of this world return to normal, her magic would still exist in this world. After weighing the pros and cons, she decided to compromise with Peter. Hearing what the other party said, Diana breathed a sigh of relief. However, don't think that the crisis of magic has been resolved. Your real crisis has just begun. The original power of magic, the dark multiverse, will come here one day. At that time, both me and the entire magic world will suffer a catastrophe. Hecate glanced at Peter. "Peter Patrick, I hope your magic of love can still save the world by then." Peter frowned slightly as he listened to what the other party said. What Hecate is talking about is the inverted man. As far as he knows, the magic of this universe originated from two people, and the bright one is the powerful magic goddess Hecate. She shared her magic power with Zeus and others. Because she was too kind, this magic goddess became the target of mankind. The pioneers tried to get magic from her, and the Greek gods betrayed this goddess, so Hecate went from the light side to the dark side. After Hecate broke up, she no longer believed in anyone. She once designed a barrier for this universe, the biggest purpose of which was to prevent the upside-down people living in the dark universe from invading this world. The so-called dark universe refers to a cold dark world outside the multiverse. It is the hometown of the upside-down people, the home of aliens, and even more terrible than hell. If the upside-down people invade this world, it would be more troublesome than Hecate. However, this woman's compromise now makes me feel relieved. Just now, she said that she would replace Hecate with a Hogwarts magic system, but she knew that it would be difficult to implement it in practice. Not to mention that the magic theories of the two worlds are different. Is it that I have to open a Hogwarts school of witchcraft and wizardry in this world, and teach a new set of magic to wizards all over the world? He was lost in thought, and Hecate looked at Peter deeply and slowly disappeared. The strong light on Diana's body gradually melted away and returned to its original state. The swamp monster in the distance immediately felt the vitality of the green of all things restored. Extending his roots deep into the ground, he looked towards the place where Hecate disappeared. He whispered to everyone, "I think Peter Patrick succeeded." Zatanna heaved a sigh of relief when she heard what the swamp monster said. "I knew that Mr. Patrick would succeed." Constantine smacked his lips and asked the swamp monster, "You said that the farmer just saved magic from the hands of the Almighty God and saved us." "Well, obviously, he did it. The magic released by his 4 children is the magic that makes me feel calm." The swamp monster expressed his feelings. Then he tilted his head to look at Zatanna. "Zatanna, is he also a god?" Zatanna thought about it. Although she wanted to say no, she thought of the world tree in Peter's courtyard and the incredible things that happened to Peter, and nodded and said, "I don't know, but I think he should be the god in charge of children." Swamp monster, on the battlefield. After seeing Hecate retreat, Diana's body softened and she fell backwards. Peter reached out to support her. "Are you okay, Diana?" "I'm fine, I'm just a little weak." Diana felt weak all over, as if all the strength in her body had been drained. "Thank you, Peter, you saved me and saved magic." Being supported by Peter, she panted slightly and thanked him. I owe you too much. We don't need this between us, but if you really want to thank someone, you should thank Raven and Tom and the others." Peter waved to Raven and the others, asking them to come over. "Dad." Raven came over excitedly and hugged Peter. "We did it." Tom still maintained his gentlemanly movements with a calm expression on his face. Loki looked relaxed. Mark's emotions kept fluctuating. Because of repelling Hecate, he felt that he could finally be a useful person to his father like Raven and the others. "You all did a good job, kids, I'm proud of you." Peter patted Raven on the shoulder. He didn't expect that these 4 naughty children could release Expecto Patronus. Moreover, the spell energy released by the 4 people was so powerful that it helped him to repel Hecate. Peter fell into deep thought. His previous understanding of Hogwarts was not comprehensive. The magic of the Hogwarts world may sometimes not be as powerful as the magicians who signed a contract with the devil in the DC world. But the magic of Hogwarts should not be judged simply from this perspective. Perhaps, as Dumbledore once said, the most powerful magic in the Hogwarts world is love. Love is the biggest bug in this world. From the sacrifice of Harry's parents to his deep friendship with his friends, and then to Dumbledore's sacrifice, emotions have always been the cornerstone supporting this world. It is not only an expression of emotion, but also an invisible and powerful magical force. Now Raven and Tom, Mark, and Loki's Patronus have proved this point. Chapter 508, Death Anniversary Dinner, The Death of Mrs. Loris. 2 months later. Since Hecate was defeated by Peter and Robin, the magic world has returned to peace. Nendarbat was destroyed, and Ramakrishna took up residence in Lady Xanadu, temporarily solving her accommodation problem. The cemetery of the swamp monsters has regained its vitality. Everything seems to have returned to its original state of vitality. Hogwarts. The cold winter is coming, and the damp wind blows across the castle. Along with the cold wind comes a rapid drop in temperature. For several days, raindrops hit the windows of the castle like bullets day and night. The lake water rose, and a lot of soil from the flower bed was washed away, making the whole road muddy. Mark walked on the muddy path and wrapped his clothes tightly. "Hey, Mark," Harry's voice came from behind him. Looking back, he found that it was Harry and Ron walking towards him. Because Mark's integrity was very suitable for Harry's character, after a few months of getting along, the few people have become good friends. "Are you free tonight? Mark, we can go to the death anniversary party together." Mark frowned slightly when he heard Ron's words, and asked in confusion, "What is a death anniversary party?" "Isn't today Halloween?" Harry explained to him. "It was organized by Headless Nick. He said that this Halloween is the 500th anniversary of his death." Mark didn't know whether he should show a happy or sad expression. Headless Nick is the ghost of Gryffindor College. His head and neck are only connected by a layer of skin, but he is not scary, very kind and funny. As for when he appeared in the college, it is no longer known. Mark heard that his neck was chopped 44 times by a blunt axe. Ron continued, "He said that he would hold a party in a big house, and friends from all over the country would attend." He looked at Harry and showed a dissatisfied expression. Harry actually agreed without asking my opinion. "I originally planned to attend the school's Halloween. To be honest, I don't understand why someone would celebrate his own death." Mark didn't know how to respond. After a long time, he said, "Well, it sounds very depressing. I am willing to go to the party with you." "I mean, the death anniversary party, very good, this is a real good friend." Ron came over and put his arm around Mark's shoulders. "Mark, tell me more about Mr. Padrick's battle with the parasite." Harry and the three people already knew that Mark came from a parallel world that was completely different from their world. After the curiosity of the three people was aroused, they pestered Mark to ask about the farm. Ron and Hermione were particularly interested in Mark's legendary father. Now the two of them would pull Mark to listen to Peter's adventure stories whenever they were free. "Didn't I tell you yesterday?" Mark said with a blink of his eyes. "Really? I forgot." "Then tell me the story of General Zod. You said you fought against aliens together. Oh, by the way, can I meet your two brothers who can fly and shoot lasers from their eyes? I remember they showed up at the opening dinner." Ron expressed his desire to meet Zoo and Clark. Mark couldn't resist Ron's enthusiasm and smiled awkwardly. "I'll tell them, at night." Because the school was holding Halloween, Mark, Raven, Tom, and Loki were all in school and didn't go back to the farm. At 7 o'clock, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Mark walked straight out the door and came to the crowded hall. The hall was shining with golden plates and candles, creating a peaceful atmosphere for Halloween. After that, they walked to the office. Candles were placed in the aisle leading to Headless Nick's party. The thin and long black candles, with bright blue candlelight, cast dim ghostly shadows on the faces of several people. With every step down, it seemed that the temperature here would drop a little. Harry trembled a little and wrapped his magic robe tightly around his body. Just after walking a few steps, he suddenly heard a sound like nails scratching a blackboard. "What's that sound?" Mark also heard it, and he whispered to the others. Harry shook his head to indicate that he didn't know. Hermione and Ron looked confused, neither of them heard it. Then the others turned a corner and saw Headless Nick standing next to the door with a black and purple curtain. "My dear friends, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here." Headless Nick took off his feather hat, bowed to the others, and let Mark and the others in. Entering the room, the scene inside was unbelievable. In the room, hundreds of pale and transparent people were floating on the dance floor, dancing the waltz to the terrifying and creepy music. On the platform under the black curtain, a symphony orchestra was pulling 30 electric saws vigorously. The tree-shaped chandeliers above the ghosts' heads emitted a strange blue light. "Let's take a walk around," Harry swallowed and suggested to the others. He wanted to stretch his numb feet and hide his trembling mood. "Be careful not to cross others," Ron reminded nervously, and the others walked carefully along the edge of the stage. Then they saw a group of nuns with gloomy expressions and a ragged man wearing handcuffs. Mark even saw a knight with an arrow stuck in his forehead and a Slytherin ghost covered in blood and haggard. Just as they were about to continue their visit, Harry suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness. He seemed to hear some strange sound. "I'm so hungry. I've been waiting for a long time." Kill. Turning his head, Harry asked Mark and Hermione, "Did you hear it?" Mark nodded solemnly. "I heard it." The sound became weaker and weaker. Harry was sure that the sound was there, and fled upwards. "This way." Standing up, Harry quickly ran up the stairs and entered the lobby. At the Halloween banquet, the noisy conversations of students and teachers echoed in the lobby. Harry ran up the stone steps to the first floor, followed closely by Ron, Hermione and Mark. "Harry, what are we doing?" Harry made a gesture to keep quiet. He raised his head and heard the voice above his head. I smell blood. Catch up with him. That voice seems to be plotting something bad. He seems to want to kill someone," Harry said as he hurried forward, and Mark followed closely behind him. Ron and Hermione looked at each other in confusion, and rushed up the stairs 3 steps at a time, chasing after the two. Harry and Mark rushed to the second floor, and Ron and Hermione followed breathlessly behind, and finally stopped in an empty corridor at the end. "Harry, Mark, what's going on?" Ron asked the two breathlessly. "I can't hear anything." Hermione on the other side pointed at the corridor and took a breath of cold air. "Look at you." The wall in front of the corridor was flashing with light. The group walked slowly and carefully into the dim corridor. On the walls of the 2 windows, the palm-sized words painted on them glowed faintly under the flickering torches. "The mysterious secret room has been opened. Offspring of the enemy, beware." Ron turned his eyes away from the words and looked in other directions, and saw something that frightened him. He asked in a trembling voice, "What's hanging down there?" There was a large puddle of water on the floor, reflecting the faint light. Under the words, there was a black mass. They immediately recognized what it was, and the frightened Hermione screamed and quickly jumped back. Mrs. Norris, the cat raised by the administrator Argus Filch, her tail was hanging on the torch barrel, her body was as stiff as a board, and her eyes were wide open staring at the group. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were stunned and dared not move. Mark, who was well informed, was the first to react and wanted to put Mrs. Norris down. But thunderous applause soon broke out in the banquet, and footsteps were heard on the stairs. The students who finished the dinner walked up the stairs and saw this horrifying scene. Seeing the hanging cat, everyone stopped chattering. The whole corridor fell into an eerie silence, and everyone looked at the words on the wall. After a while, a voice rang out in the crowd, "Descendants of the enemy, beware. You are the next target." A person of Muggle descent, Malfoy stood up, looked at Harry, who was blushing, and said sarcastically, "What happened? What happened?" The voices from the crowd soon attracted the administrator Argus Filch. He used his shoulders to push a path and pass through the crowd. When he saw Mrs. Norris, he was so scared that he stepped back, his face full of horror. My cat. My cat. What happened to Mrs. Norris?" he screamed. His eyes widened, and cast his eyes on Harry. "You," he screamed, "it's you. You killed my cat. You killed her. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to." Filch. Soon a voice interrupted him, and Professor Dumbledore arrived at the critical moment. He asked Professor McGonagall to put Mrs. Norris down, and then asked Mark and the others to go to his office with him. In the early morning, Raven took the school bus back to the farm and told Mark what happened. Peter took the school bus and rushed to Hogwarts School. After entering the principal's office, Peter saw Dumbledore put Mrs. Norris on the smooth table and was examining her. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Mark sat heavily on the chairs next to the candlesticks, exchanging nervous looks from time to time. Chapter 509. What kind of magic is this? Sensitive girl Hermione. Dad. Seeing Peter coming in, Mark immediately stood up and looked at him anxiously and expectantly. Hermione was originally observing the portraits hanging on the wall of the headmaster's office. When she heard Peter's voice, she immediately shifted her sight away from the portraits. She didn't expect Peter to come. Well, this is the advantage of day school. It would be great if her parents were wizards and could come at any time after she got into trouble. She couldn't help but think about it. In addition to Dumbledore and Mark's group, Professor Rawherd and the administrator Argus Filch, Snape, and Professor McGonagall were also present in the office. Mr. Padraic, Dumbledore stood up immediately after seeing Peter appear. Argus Filch was still a little angry, and his expression didn't change after seeing Peter appear. After Peter glanced at the office, he came over and touched Mark and Harry's heads first. Hermione took a step forward in anticipation, wanting Peter to touch her hair. Unexpectedly, Peter just touched Harry and Mark's heads and turned around. Hermione felt a little frustrated. Because of the last time at Gringotts, she thought Peter would be the first to come forward and say good evening, Miss Granger, but she didn't expect Peter to ignore her. Good evening, Professor Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Professor Lockhart. Although it should be considered early in the morning, Peter glanced at the watch on his wrist and said to everyone, I didn't expect such a thing to alarm you, Mr. Padraic. Dumbledore came out and shook hands with Peter. After all, this is related to Mark. Peter glanced at Filch, and then at the cat on the desk. I heard Raven tell me what happened, Peter said to Dumbledore. As for the murderer, I think it must have nothing to do with Harry and Mark. After all, they can't master such a high-level spell. He said that the spell that killed Mrs. Norris was not an ordinary spell. I agree. She must have been killed by a spell. It could have been black magic torture. Lockhart showed off his knowledge. I've seen this many times. It's a pity that I wasn't here. Otherwise, I could have used a spell to save her. Ahem, Mr. Padraic, I've heard of you for a long time. I'm glad to see you tonight. Lockhart coughed and took the initiative to approach Peter to talk. Although he didn't know Peter's background, he knew that he had a close relationship with Dumbledore. To be able to make Dumbledore to make an exception and be invited to the opening dinner, such a person must be a big shot. Even if he is not a big shot in the wizarding world, he has 4 outstanding children. Such an unusual person is worth making friends with. Seeing this liar who only knows the forgetfulness spell greet him, Peter did not show any abnormality. He shook hands with the other party. I have heard of your name, Professor Lockhart. You are very famous in the British wizarding world, haha. That's just that everyone likes my adventures and often spreads my name, so I have become somewhat famous, Professor Lockhart said without any modesty. The murderer is him. Filch suddenly burst into emotion and pointed at Harry and said, it was him who did it. It was Harry Potter who killed Norris. Filch, who was very dissatisfied with Harry, directly put the hat of the murderer on Harry. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He found in my office and he knew that I was a. Filch's face changed expression. He knows that I am a squid, Filch said with gritted teeth. I have never touched Mrs. Norris, Harry retorted loudly. He felt very uncomfortable because he realized that everyone was looking at him. And I don't know what a squib is. Squib describes people who are born in a magical family but have no magical talent, and the word itself has a bit of the attribute of a nickname, similar to mudblood. Nonsense, Filch roared. He has read my letter. Please allow me to say a few words. Snape, who had been standing in the shadows and remained silent, stopped Filch from speaking. Seeing Snape speak, Harry had a bad feeling in his heart. He didn't think that the other party would speak well for him. Harry and the others were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was a hint of contempt in Snape's tone. But there are indeed some things that deserve our suspicion, such as, why were they in the corridor upstairs at that time? Why weren't they at the Halloween party? Mark began to explain the death anniversary party. There were hundreds of little ghosts there. They could tell you where we were. But why didn't you join the party later? Snape asked, his feminine expression gleaming in the candlelight. Why did you go to the corridor? Because, Harry was speechless. His heart was beating fast. He knew that if he said that he was led there by an invisible but audible voice, they would definitely not believe it. Because we are all tired and want to go back to sleep. No dinner? Snape continued to ask, with a triumphant smile on his thin face. Besides, I don't think ghosts will provide food that suits the taste of humans at a banquet. We are not hungry, Ron said loudly. But soon there was a loud gurgling sound from his stomach. Snape's smile became more obvious. Headmaster, I don't think Potter is completely honest. With a triumphant expression on his face, he said to Dumbledore, maybe it would be a good idea to deprive him of some of his privileges until he tells us the truth of the whole thing. I don't think this is a good idea, Professor Snape." Just when Harry fell into despair, Peter's voice suddenly sounded. Harry immediately raised his head gratefully and looked at Peter. "You have no evidence to prove that they did it." Peter slowly walked to Mrs. Norris, "and Mrs. Norris is not dead." Hearing Peter's words, Mark and others were all stunned. She was just under some kind of spell, some evil petrification spell. Peter stretched out his hand and constructed a rune under the gaze of everyone. In the eyes of everyone, the magical text symbols flashed by, and the healing rune flashed a bright silver light, and the petrified cat's body immediately softened. This kind of advanced spell, Harry and his friends are in the second year, and Mark is in the first year. "I don't think they have this ability, right, Professor Snape?" Snape did not answer. He looked at the magic released by Peter in shock. It was a mysterious and powerful magic that he had never felt before. He looked at Peter in astonishment. You lifted the spell that Mrs. Norris was under." "Yes, but Mrs. Norris was not only petrified, she also suffered other injuries. Professor Snape, you are the master of potions, there must be no problem leaving the rest to you, right?" Filch saw his cat resurrected from the dead, staring at Peter blankly, wondering how he did it. Dumbledore smiled slightly, but he quickly concealed it. Harry and Ron breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Peter saving Mrs. Norris. While being grateful to Peter, Harry had a lot of questions in his mind. What kind of magic did Mr. Patrick use? Why could he release such amazing magic without using a wand? Mr. Patrick, who could give birth to wizards as powerful as Tom and Raven, was no ordinary person. Hermione was stunned to see Peter heal Mrs. Norris, and she cast an admiring gaze at Peter while being shocked. Lockhart, who was standing by, felt a little unhappy when he saw Hermione's admiring gaze. This girl used to cast such a gaze on him. "Ahem, I can see that Mrs. Norris is petrified, and I was just about to cast a spell to make her recover," Lockhart defended himself. Harry, why didn't he realize that the other party was so shameless before? After Mrs. Norris's matter was resolved, Hermione separated from Harry and Ron and prepared to return to the dormitory. Peter took Mark back to the farm. Just after leaving the corridor of the principal's office, Hermione suddenly heard a voice behind her. "Miss Granger." Hearing the familiar voice, Hermione turned around. What caught her eyes was Peter standing in the dim corridor with a mysterious aura. Mr. Papadrick, she didn't expect Peter to call her. "Can we talk? Miss Granger, although it's a little late now, I hope it doesn't disturb your bedtime," Peter walked up and said to her with a smile. Of course," Hermione said excitedly. She just thought that Peter had forgotten her because he touched Harry's head and didn't talk to her. It turned out that Mr. Papadrick had not forgotten her. This little girl who often held her chin high, always maintained pride, and always had a hint of contempt and disgust in her heart, was actually extremely fragile and sensitive in her heart. She didn't have parents like Harry to be proud of, nor did she have Ron's warm and happy magic family. She was born in an ordinary family, but she had wizard blood. It was like a common girl accidentally entered an aristocratic school with admission requirements. All she could do was disguise and hide her poverty. And what she had to do was to eliminate her identity as a mudblood. But this was not easy. The first time her mudblood identity was made public was when Malfoy said this to her in a sarcastic tone. She frowned fiercely and her eyes turned red. The second time was when Harry asked in front of Hagrid, "What is a mudblood?" Hermione's narration was full of resentment and grievance, and she was almost emotionally collapsed. This identity that she was born with and could not change made her extremely sensitive. Chapter 510, Azu turns into a big bird. Is he rebelling? "Mr. Padraic, what are you going to talk to me about?" Hermione asked expectantly. "Nothing, I just want to talk to you about what happened today." Peter took a step closer to Hermione and said. If he remembered correctly, everything that happened today was the beginning of the Chamber of Secrets. At first it was Filch's cat, then Colin who worshipped Harry, then Justin Finch Fletch, and finally Hermione was petrified by the basilisk. Although he knew that the mastermind behind the scenes was the diary that possessed the soul of Tom Riddle in this world. But he didn't know where this mysterious Chamber of Secrets was. Although he could take the diary away now, the diary containing Voldemort's Horcrux would stay in this world to prevent the subsequent plot from changing too much. Moreover, this kind of thing might not be a training opportunity for Mark and Raven. Peter believed that Raven, Tom, and Loki would not fail in dealing with the basilisk. The only one who might be in danger was Mark. However, he had placed a grain of sand from the Sandman's sandbag on Mark. Once he encountered a dangerous situation, this grain of sand could also protect him. So Peter had no intention of stopping the upcoming Chamber of Secrets. He believed that his naughty children could handle it. But before that, he needed to give Hermione a hint. Hermione didn't know that so many thoughts were flashing through Peter's mind. She raised her head slightly and asked Peter expectantly and nervously, "Mr. Padraic, what do you want to talk to me about? Is it about Mrs. Norris being petrified?" "Yes, I heard from Mark that you are very smart, Miss Granger, and you are diligent and studious, and you are also called Miss Problematic." Listening to Peter's words, Hermione felt a little embarrassed. She didn't expect Mark to say this to his father. Thank you for your recognition of me, Mr. Padraic." Hermione raised her head slightly, but soon realized that it was inappropriate for her to do so, so she suppressed her little smugness and said to Peter modestly, "I just like reading. So, Miss Granger, regarding Mrs. Norris's incident today, I believe you will always find out the reason and the real murderer behind it." Peter cast his eyes out of the window, and the dark night was submerged by the night. "However, I have a little clue here. Maybe it will help you to investigate the real murderer." Hearing Peter say that the clues provided would be helpful to her, Hermione was stunned. Did Mr. Padraic know something? But if he knew, why didn't he tell Professor Dumbledore? Hermione fell into thought. After a while, she opened her bright eyes and asked Peter, "What is it?" Mr. Padraic, she believed that no matter what Peter's purpose was, he would not harm her. After all, he was Mark's father. In 1942, a tragedy occurred at Hogwarts School, Peter said to her slowly. At that time, a student was killed by a creature controlled by the heir of Slytherin, and Hagrid was considered the culprit, as well as his friend Aragog, the monster that frightened Hogwarts. After that, Hagrid was expelled from Hogwarts, and Professor Dumbledore made him a school nurse to help him. Peter said something that stunned Hermione. She didn't expect Hagrid to have such a past. "Why do you know all this? Mr. Padraic, did you also graduate from Hogwarts?" Hermione asked curiously. "No, I didn't graduate from Hogwarts." Peter shook his head and said to her, "I grew up in a Muggle school." Hermione was surprised when she heard Peter talking about Muggle schools. "Sir, are you also from a Muggle family?" Hermione was very happy that Peter and she had the same background. "Well, you can say that." Peter thought for a moment and said to her, "In our world, there is no such discrimination. We even divide different groups of people into Muggles and wizards. Then how do wizards in your world learn magic? Mr. Padraic, where does the magic that wizards learn come from?" Hermione opened her mouth and asked Peter non-stop. "That's a long story. The magic in our world was obtained from a witch named Hecate. But she has been a little angry recently, and our magic world has experienced some turmoil." Peter looked down at his watch, then patted her hair. "Well, it's getting late, Miss Granger, you should go back and rest. Regarding the different magics in the two worlds, maybe I can invite you to visit our world during the winter vacation, and you can compare them carefully." Hermione's mood immediately improved after Peter patted her hair. She nodded and said to Peter excitedly, Thank you for your invitation, Mr. Padraic." She made a promise to Peter, "I will definitely find out the real culprit who cursed Mrs. Norris." "Of course, I believe you," Peter nodded and said. The original world line was that Hermione found out the truth. Although she was petrified by the basilisk, the note she held in her hand at the time gave Harry a clue. "Goodbye, Mr. Padraic, I wish you a good mood." Waved to Peter, Hermione said goodbye to him happily. "Goodbye, Miss Granger." "Wait." Peter looked at her back as she left and called her back again. Peter, who was lost in thought, hesitated for a second, and finally decided to take out an extra insurance policy. He treated Hermione as a tool, but he couldn't be a black-hearted capitalist who didn't care about anything. Although in the original world line, Hermione was only photographed by the basilisk, it was possible that the world line would change due to the intervention of himself and Raven and others. If Hermione was killed by the basilisk like Myrtle, then he would be blind. Hermione turned her head in confusion, not knowing why Peter called her back. Peter walked slowly in the dim corridor and came to her. "For your safety, Miss Granger, you have to take some protective measures." As he spoke, Peter stretched out his hand. In Hermione's astonished eyes, she saw a grain of sand with a silver glow slowly falling into her palm. "What is this, Mr. Padraic?" Feeling the special and magical feeling, Hermione asked in surprise. "You can use it as a protective magic. It can help you resist a fatal magical injury." Peter gently placed his fingers on the sand that was emitting a silver glow. Under Peter's control, The sand quickly turned into a sharp amethyst-shaped amulet. He remembered that after the attack of the Chamber of Secrets basilisk, as students began to be petrified at Hogwarts, the business of selling amulets among students began to flourish. Neville Longbottom once bought a sharp amethyst, a rotting newt tail, and a large green onion that smelled bad. In order to prevent Hermione from being killed by the basilisk, Peter made a real amulet in advance for her. "Is this for me?" Feeling the extraordinary amulet in her hand, she asked in surprise and joy. "Of course, thank you." Hermione took the amulet excitedly. But she soon realized that this was not good, and reluctantly returned the amulet to Peter. "No, Mr. Padraic, it's too expensive," Hermione said sensibly. "It's okay. I have many similar ones. It's not expensive to me. Besides, you are Mark's friend." Peter said that the amulet was not that expensive. In the end, Hermione accepted the amulet. She hugged Peter gratefully, and then said goodbye to him reluctantly. Peter waited until her back disappeared, walked to the window, and cast his eyes on the gradually foggy night. The next day, Padrick Farm. During breakfast, Zoo kept staring at Loki, and his unfriendly eyes made Loki feel uneasy. "Is there any problem, John?" Loki asked him doubtfully. Peter heard the voice and looked at Zoo with an inquiring look. Recently, Zoo has been quite honest. Is he going to do something different today? Of course. Zoo looked at Loki with a bad expression. He pointed to the biscuits in the living room and asked Loki, "Who put the biscuits there?" "Biscuits." Loki pretended to be stupid and looked at Rhea, who was daydreaming. Rhea is currently taking the accounting qualification exam and is now thinking about the content of the future exam. In addition, after becoming Peter's housekeeper, she was responsible for all the farm work. As a busy person, she needed to study while working, and her mental attributes were extremely exhausted. "Miss Rhea, that was the milk biscuit you bought, right?" After coming to Earth, Rhea developed a habit of eating sweets, so Loki asked you if she bought it. Rhea came back to her senses in a daze, nodded and said, "Yes, I bought it. There is no problem with the biscuit, but I ate one this morning and turned into a canary for 1 minute." Azu looked at Loki angrily. "I guess there is a magic biscuit in the middle of a bag of milk biscuits. It must be you, Loki." He directly put the blame for this prank on Loki's head. As a dignified countryman, he turned into a big bird, which made Azu extremely angry. Hearing that Azu put the prank on himself, Loki naturally did not admit it. "You don't have any evidence, John, and how do I know it was you who ate that cookie?" Loki looked at him suspiciously. "Wait. Why did you steal Rhea's cookie?" Sizzle. Azure activated his sight, and in anger, he shot a laser that pierced through the cup in Loki's hand. The water in Loki's cup splashed onto the table. Tom, who was eating next to him, suffered an unexpected disaster, and the soup from the food splashed all over his body. Are you rebelling? Chapter 511, Raven and Mark's sibling relationship. The Seeker decides the outcome. Seeing Azu and Loki fighting openly at the breakfast table, Peter was immediately furious. "If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you think I'm a sick cat?" Peter slammed the table heavily and glared at Azu. "John, are you itching?" Seeing Peter angry, Azu stopped talking immediately. Raven, Tom, Star-Lord, Mark and others also kept quiet. Loki carefully put down the cup that was burned by the laser, and quickly glanced at Peter, pretending to be innocent. "Loki, did you do it?" Seeing that no one spoke, Peter cast a bad look at Loki. Loki subconsciously wanted to deny it, but after seeing Peter's eyes, he laughed unnaturally. "Dad, I just wanted to play a joke on Azu." "I don't think this is a joke," Azu snorted and said. "You, John, do you think it was right for you to shoot Hot Eyes just now?" Peter glared at Azu again. "This kid dared to do this while eating. Will Red One shoot Hot Eyes at others in the future? Isn't this a fellow countryman from the Black Robe world? And he knew that this naughty kid liked milk? I didn't expect that he was already in the 3rd year of high school, but he still had a special liking for milk, and even stole other people's milk biscuits." Being scolded by Peter, Azu looked around, puffed up his cheeks and exhaled guiltily like a big mushroom. Seeing this naughty kid doing this again, Peter was immediately speechless. With a tense face, Peter coughed and said to the other party, "When eating, you are not allowed to look away, understand?" "John, yes, Dad." Seeing that Peter seemed to no longer pursue the matter, Azu breathed a sigh of relief. "You should learn from Raven and Mark. The two siblings have never had a conflict. They are model siblings." Peter looked at Raven and Mark, who were eating silently, and praised them. However, What he didn't expect was that Mark and Raven's friendship would soon face a test. At noon, Hogwarts. At the Ellis Gymnasium, the Gryffindor players changed into their scarlet Gryffindor uniforms and sat down to listen to Wood's usual pre-match morale-boosting speech. Harry and Mark sat together and listened to Wood's speech. As a first year, Mark probably had a natural flying talent as a Vitrum man, which led to his first use of a flying broomstick, and he performed excellent flying skills that even senior students could not do. Therefore, due to his excellent flying talent, he was selected to join the Gryffindor team. Slytherin has better brooms than us, Wood said to the players. There is no doubt about it, but we have better players. We train harder than them, we fly in all kinds of weather, and we do better than them. So, victory must belong to us. Then he turned his eyes to Mark, who was a little uneasy. Last time we lost because of Raven's unreasonableness, but now we also have a member of the Padraic family. As he said this, he turned his eyes to Mark, who was preparing to play for the first time. Mark, it's all up to you. Go stop your sister and catch the snitch before Raven, Mark, because we have to win today, and we are ready to win. According to the Quidditch rules, the side that catches the snitch can get 150 points. Only when the snitch is caught can a Quidditch game end, which means whoever catches the snitch basically wins. Mark, me. How can I stop her? Mark thought of the journey to the west of Eastern University that his father had told him before. Isn't this equivalent to letting a little monster like him catch Tang Monk and his disciples? Don't be too stressed. Fred Weasley patted Mark on the shoulder and made a face at him. Harry held Mark's hand beside him. Don't worry, we fight side by side. Thank you. Feeling the courage that Harry passed on to him, Mark felt much better. But soon his face became bitter. Harry took the initiative to give up the position of seeker to himself, so that he could face his sister. He suspected that Harry was actually as sinister as his sister. A few minutes later, the Gryffindor team members filed out amid the cheers of the audience. The people of Gryffindor House cheered loudly, while the students of Slytherin House booed in unison. Madam Hooch asked Wood, the captain of the Gryffindor team, to shake hands with Marcus Flint, the captain of the Slytherin team. The two gave each other a provocative look and shook hands tightly. Mark looked at Raven, who was standing behind with a calm expression. He took a deep breath nervously. Listen to my whistle, Madam Hooch shouted. 3, 2, 1, as the crowd cheered, the contestants rose into the sky. Mark flew to the highest point with a whoosh, squinting his eyes to look for the golden snitch. But soon he was spotted by Raven. Sorry, Mark, your first game today will end in failure. Raven flew over and threatened Mark. Mark felt a strong wind pouring into his ears. He opened his mouth and shouted to Raven, that's not necessarily true. Very good, you are brave, Mark, but don't cry later. I won't let you go just because you are my brother. Swoosh, as soon as Raven finished speaking, she rushed into the clouds to find the golden snitch. She played the same position as Mark, a seeker, responsible for catching the golden snitch. In the audience, Loki sat among the Hufflepuff students and watched the game with his new friend Cedric. Tom was surrounded by the girls from Ravenclaw, watching the game between Raven and Mark. Looking at the siblings chasing each other, his brows slightly frowned. Just as the game was going on, it began to rain. Drip, drip raindrops began to fall from the sky, and the sky quickly became dark. Mark's vision was gradually blurred by the rain, and he could vaguely hear the commentator's voice. Slytherin is leading now, 70-0, realizing that his side was lagging behind. Mark anxiously looked for the shadow of the golden snitch. There, in the heavy rain, Mark, who was flying up and down, soon found the shadow of the golden snitch. Passing through the rain and fog, Mark, who was constantly accelerating, stretched out his hand to try to catch the golden snitch. Bang! A green figure wearing a Slytherin uniform passed through the rain curtain at a faster speed and grabbed the snitch first. After Mark saw that it was Raven, he immediately accelerated nervously. Riding on the Nimbus 2000, Raven made a sharp turn in the air, dodged Fred who was trying to intercept her, and suddenly crashed into Mark. Mark was hit by Raven and his body was unstable. He lost his sense of direction and flew in other directions. After getting rid of the two, Raven made a sharp turn with a nimble posture and grabbed the golden snitch with one hand. Mark, who was thrown away, braked suddenly in the air amid the exclamations of the audience, and then accelerated to rush towards Raven to stop her. Raven didn't expect Mark to move so quickly. Whoosh, due to her brief hesitation. The golden snitch disappeared in an instant and flew forward. With a gritted teeth, Raven suddenly accelerated and flew forward. In the rain and fog, Mark quickly caught up, and the two drove forward side by side. The wind and raindrops whistled, and Mark suddenly accelerated to overtake Raven. Whoosh! The next second, a high tower appeared in front of the two. Mark, who was startled, adjusted his direction in time to avoid hitting it. Raven dodged the high tower and whistled in the rain and fog to overtake Mark. Two figures, one red and one green, took turns to lead at high speed in the heavy rain, shocking the audience in the stands. Soon Raven found the golden snitch again, and Fred also flew over to intercept her. Raven frowned and flew straight towards Fred. Fred, who thought Raven was going to hide him, immediately rose up. Unexpectedly, Raven turned suddenly, passed through him and flew straight to the ground. The golden snitch flew towards the audience in the heavy rain. Whoosh, whoosh, Raven and Mark, two figures, passed through the crowd in the audience, one after the other, causing waves of exclamations. Excited Ron and Hermione even forgot the heavy rain in the sky, and shouted loudly to cheer for Mark. Mark, whose eyes were already a little hard to open, could only vaguely see the golden snitch flying close to the grass. Shaking his head, he accelerated towards the ground. Finally, he accelerated to catch up with Raven. The two figures rushed to the ground from high altitude in the rain and fog. Oh my god! They will definitely collide. Ron stood up anxiously and shouted to Mark, "Stop, Mark!" Mark, who was rushing down at a high speed, glanced at Raven with his eyes blurred by the rain. Raven was also accelerating towards the ground. Two figures, one red and one green, fell to the ground like meteors. In the eyes of everyone's shock, Raven, who had been accelerating, suddenly stopped. Mark, who was dazzled by the speed, mustered up his courage in the heavy rain, and braked and turned while getting close to the ground. With a snap, he grabbed the snitch. But because he lost his balance, he also fell off the broom and fell to the ground. Snap! At the critical moment, Raven flew over and grabbed his hand and pulled him onto her flying broom. "Are you stupid?" Raven cursed at him with rain on her face. "This is not bravery, it is reckless suicide." Mark was a little stunned. He didn't expect Raven to come to save him. He immediately understood that Raven could have clearly not slowed down just now. With her flying skills, she could definitely get the snitch before him. But because he was worried that he would be in danger, he took the initiative to slow down in the end and gave up the victory that was within his grasp. Thank you, sister," Mark thanked Raven loudly. "Don't thank me. I just don't want Dad to be sad to see you get into trouble." The audience cheered loudly after seeing Mark catch the golden snitch. Chapter 512 Peter, I am so tired. No rebellious son is easy to worry about. You did it. Mark, after Madam Hooch blew the whistle to end the game, Wood, Harry and others rushed up immediately. Raven put Mark down and let him accept the cheers of the crowd, and returned to the Slytherin team with a calm expression. Mark, the twin brothers George and Fred lifted Mark on their shoulders and cheered loudly. Ron and Hermione in the audience also clapped their hands excitedly. Incredible flight, Mark, Fred whistled and shouted loudly. Next we will have a celebration party, Gryffindor cheered loudly, while Slytherin, where Raven was, had a heavy atmosphere. Intimidated by Raven's power, everyone dared not say anything. Malfoy frowned slightly and looked at Raven again, wanting to say something but stopping himself. "It's just one loss, we haven't lost yet," Flint coughed and came to comfort Raven. As the captain of the Slytherin team, Flint played in a rough way, wishing to break his opponent's fingers every minute. But facing Raven, who had hit him in the face with a ball and hung him up and spun him without using a wand, Flint acted as a very friendly captain. Raven didn't appreciate his kindness, snorted coldly and laughed angrily. Flint looked at Raven's back, and his expression kept changing. If possible, he really wanted to exercise his rights as a senior and teach this first-year guy a lesson. But when he thought of Raven's strength and Professor Snape's blatant favoritism towards Raven, he immediately stopped. Afternoon. After attending the celebration party held by Fred, Mark and Harry returned to the public lounge together. "Actually, it was my sister who let me do it," Mark said to Harry. If she didn't slow down, then she would have won. Harry believed that Mark was not lying. He thought about it and said, "Although it's true, you won in the end. If it weren't for your courage, I think Raven would definitely not slow down. To be honest, I envy your family and Ron's. You have many brothers and sisters, and everyone loves each other," Harry said melancholy. Mark didn't know how to comfort him, and after a long while he said to him, Are you not on good terms with your aunt's family? I heard from Ron that you have a cousin. Harry's face immediately fell when he heard Mark mention his cousin. We don't look like relatives. Dudley is a fool who only knows how to eat. I would rather spend the holidays at Ron's house than go back. The two talked, stepped on the stairs, and then turned to another corridor. Because of the rain, the sky was dim and the corridor was pitch black. The torch was blown out by the strong and cold wind blowing in from the broken glass window, and the corridor was even more eerie. When Mark was about to invite Harry to his farm during the winter vacation, Harry was suddenly tripped by something on the floor with a bang. He staggered forward, and when he was about to fall, Mark grabbed him. After Harry thanked Mark, he looked down to see what tripped him. When he saw the thing under his feet, he was suddenly stunned. Colin Creevey, the boy who admired him and always wanted to take a picture of him, was lying on the ground. He fell to the ground, his whole body cold and stiff, his eyes staring at the ceiling empty. His face was extremely shocked, as if he had seen something that frightened him. Next to Colin was another person. Headless Nick was lying next to him. The ghost's body was no longer snow white and transparent, but black and smoking. He floated 6 inches above the floor, motionless and petrified. Headless Nick only had half a head left, and the expression on his face was exactly the same as Colin's, as if he had also seen something that shocked him. The two looked at each other, seeing the horror in each other's eyes. Harry could hear Mark's breathing was rapid and heavy, and so was he, with a constant buzzing in his ears. The scene that happened suddenly made both of them hold their breath. Harry swallowed and looked at the wall. He saw a row of spiders crawling rapidly on the corpse. Then, the faint voices of teachers came from the classrooms on both sides. Mark knew he had to leave, but he didn't want to watch the two of them lying here. Just as the two were in a state of indecision, a figure suddenly flashed out from the shadows beside them. Mark raised his head when he heard the voice, and Tom came into his sight. Tom grabbed Mark and Harry's arms and said, "Let's go." The door leading to another corridor was pushed open, and Tom pulled the two into this corridor in the surprised eyes of the two. Just as Tom pulled the two away, a terrified scream came from the scene. Attack! 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 People and ghosts are not safe. Everyone run for their lives. Attack! Attack! As the ghost screamed, the doors in the corridor were opened one by one. The scene immediately became a mess. Everyone saw Colin, who turned into stone, and Headless Nick, who only had half of his head left. Professor McGonagall shouted loudly for everyone to be quiet. Quiet! Quiet! After stopping the noise at the scene, McGonagall squatted down with a serious expression and checked the situation of Colin and Headless Nick. Mark and Harry, who were hiding behind the wall of another corridor, held their breath nervously. Harry wanted to speak, but was stopped by Tom. Tom made a gesture to her to keep quiet, signaling him not to make a sound. Colin is in the same situation as Mrs. Norris. He was hit by a high-level evil spell. Professor Flitwick. Professor McGonagall asked Professor Flitwick of the Charms class to take Colin to the hospital. As for Nick, who had lost half of his head, since no one knew how to deal with him for the time being, Professor McGonagall asked a teacher to move him upstairs first. Mark breathed a sigh of relief after Professor McGonagall and everyone left. Tom, why are you here? Mark cast his eyes on Tom and asked him puzzledly. I just happened to pass by and saw this scene. Tom looked at the two of them calmly. If you don't leave, you will be considered the murderer, which is not a good thing, Mark, and, he cast his eyes on Harry, and our savior, being stared at by Tom. The scar on Harry's forehead hurt again. Who did it? Mark took a deep breath to calm himself down, and asked Tom, who cast this evil spell? You shouldn't ask me, Mark. Tom shook his head and said, I don't know more than you do. Really? Harry looked at Tom suspiciously. He didn't think Tom would appear at the scene for no reason. Combined with the uncomfortable aura that the other party had shown before, he suspected that Tom might also be involved. At least he knew something. You won't doubt me, Harry. Tom gave him a meaningful smile. Believe me, I'm not interested in such suspense tricks. Okay, you should go. You will have a lot of trouble next. Tom signaled that the two of them could leave now. Mark thanked Tom and took Harry away. Watching the backs of the two leaving, the smile on Tom's face slowly disappeared. He took out a thin black diary from his robe. The notebook he had always expected to get was finally obtained by him. As for why the notebook that was originally with Ginny was obtained by him, he had been keeping a close eye on Ginny, and saw her throw the book into the bathroom in the morning. So the diary he had always coveted was easily taken by him. Although Tom didn't know why Jenny threw the notebook into the bathroom at this time. Looking at the time on the cover, the ancient time told him that this diary was at least 50 years ago. Turning to the first page, he recognized a name in the smudged ink, Riddle. Tom narrowed his eyes and slowly closed the diary. At night, on the farm, Peter was shocked to know that Mark had caught a golden snitch. This kid was able to grab the golden snitch in the competition with Raven. Could it be that the blood of the Vitrum people has begun to awaken in his body now? Well done, Mark, but Peter looked at Raven. Raven, did you really not let Mark go? Raven was depressed, and she didn't even want to eat her favorite steak in front of her. She missed the taste of the left-center chicken she had eaten before, and raised her head when she heard Peter's words. No, I didn't, Dad. Raven said something that stunned Mark. She didn't admit that she let Mark win, but said to Peter, it was Mark who won the game fairly. He bravely flew towards the ground, so he caught a golden snitch. Is that so? Peter nodded thoughtfully. He knew that if Raven didn't slow down, she would definitely catch the golden snitch before Mark. But he didn't expose her, but touched his daughter's hair. It's just a game. I believe you will win next time. He looked at Tom and Loki. I remember you two also joined the Quidditch team, right? Yes, Dad. Tom and Loki nodded. You two have to work hard too. I heard that the competitiveness of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw is not very good. If you want to win the championship, it will not be easy, Peter said to the two. Tom put down the food in his hand. Dad, if you are interested in the Quidditch championship, I will win the championship and give it to you. Raven next to him couldn't help but snorted when she heard Tom's arrogant words. No matter who wins the championship, I will be very happy, Peter coughed, pretending not to see Raven's expression, and said evenly. I am so tired. These naughty kids are really worrying. They are more noisy than Zoo and Clark when they were young. Late at night, Tom returned to his room and took out a notebook he picked up under the desk lamp. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513 Could the murderer be Tom Riddle? Tom opened the diary, which was blank. Tom M. Riddle. Tom's expression became solemn as he whispered the name on it. The name of the owner of the diary was exactly the same as his previous name. It was Voldemort's past name. At this time, Tom already knew that the mysterious man who had disrupted the British magic world 12 years ago was Voldemort, that is, another self. Or in other words, the self with a different life trajectory in the past. Although he couldn't figure it out now, he was obviously adopted by his father and left that world. But in the Hogwarts magic world, there was another self who was not adopted. He grew up in an orphanage step by step, then went to Hogwarts, became the great devil that everyone feared, and was finally killed by a baby. What a fool, you can be killed by yourself. You are not me. You are just a guy with ambition but no means. Tom, who made such an evaluation of Voldemort, stood in front of the window with a notebook in his hand and looked at the farm outside. So the reason why I have a strange feeling about Harry Potter is because if my fate is not changed by my father, I will be killed by him in the end. His expression became serious and he held the notebook tightly. But you won't get what you want this time, Harry Potter. After whispering, Tom sat down and cast his eyes on the diary. If you want to figure out the life that another self has experienced, this diary is the best tool. As for why there is no handwriting on the diary, maybe it is the hidden ink? Tom patted the diary casually and tried to recite the spell, Apaltia, and, after using the revelation spell, it still had no effect, and there was no handwriting on the diary. After thinking about it, he took out a feather pen from the bedside table. After using the feather pen to dip a drop of ink, he dripped the ink on the diary. After a while, under his gaze, the ink slowly disappeared on the paper of the diary. Then he wrote a word on it with the feather pen. Hello. He didn't have much hope at first, but the handwriting he wrote actually miraculously flashed and disappeared quickly. After that, while he was waiting, the diary finally moved. With his ink, some words slowly emerged from the page. Hello, my name is Riddle. How did you get my diary? After these characters appeared, they seemed to have a time limit and quickly disappeared from the paper. Tom was stunned for a moment, and then calmly wrote on it with a feather pen, someone threw it in the bathroom. Fortunately, It was not completely destroyed. Even more fortunately, I recorded my memories with something more durable than ink. Thank you for talking to me. What do you mean? Tom wrote on it with a feather pen. Why can you communicate with me? Are you really called Tom Riddle? As for why I can communicate with you, this is a long story. Maybe I can explain it to you later. What I can answer you now is, yes, Tom Riddle is my name. The handwriting in the diary slowly emerged, and then quickly disappeared. Can I know your name? The handwriting that appeared on the diary asked Tom. Tom narrowed his eyes slightly. Of course, I'm Tom Patrick, a first-year student in Ravenclaw. Very good, Tom. It seems that we have the same name. Listen, I must tell you that this diary records some terrible things, some hidden emotions. What happened at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Well, I'm very interested in this. Tom lured the snake out of its hole and pretended to know nothing. Recently, terrible things have happened here at Hogwarts. Do you know about the secret chamber? The handwriting on the diary gradually became scribbled. Of course I know the mystery of the secret chamber, Tom. When I was in school, everyone told us that it was just a legend and it didn't exist, but you must know that it was a lie. The diary wrote scribbled words to him. In my 5th year, the Chamber of Secrets was opened, and the monster came out to attack the students of Hogwarts. Unfortunately, a student died. I caught the person who opened the Chamber of Secrets. He was expelled. He deserved to be punished, but Headmaster Dumbledore felt that it was a shame for this kind of thing to happen in Hogwarts. Therefore, Headmaster Dumbledore did not allow me to tell the truth. They told the outside world that the girl died in an accident. That was a lie. They warned me and ordered me to keep silent, but I know it will happen again. The monster in the Chamber of Secrets is still alive, and the person who has the ability to release it has not been locked up. The handwriting in the diary thought that Tom did not believe him, and continued to write. Don't you believe it? Padraic, I will prove it to you. Just as Tom was thinking, the diary opened a gap, and suddenly it was like being blown by a strong wind. The room was instantly filled with strong winds, and the books placed on the desk and the photos of him and his father were blown to the ground. Tom grabbed the photo frame. Then he felt his body being pulled into the book. Holding the photo frame, he was sucked into a place where colors and shadows intertwined. His feet touched the solid ground, and then Tom felt that his blurred vision began to become clear. He immediately understood where he was. On the steps of Hogwarts School, he saw Professor Dumbledore. Behind Professor Dumbledore were several teachers carrying a corpse. The teachers carried a corpse covered with a white cloth and walked down from it. He saw another self. Or to be more precise, a more mature teenage self who looked like himself. Although the two looked different, Tom recognized it at a glance. It was another self. The other Tom Riddle took off his hat, and the badge of the 3 good students shone on his chest. Professor, is the school really going to be closed for this? Tom Riddle asked Dumbledore worriedly. I'm sorry, Tom. The current situation is that the school may make some arrangements for you after something like this happened, but under the current circumstances, Professor, I don't have a home. This is my home. I don't want to leave. Tom Riddle showed a sad expression on his face. My dear child, you must know how dangerous it is for the school to keep you here. We have lost a poor girl, and now the Ministry of Magic is even considering closing the school. Tom Riddle in the diary whispered, if the murderer is caught, then everything will be over. What? Dumbledore looked at him in confusion. Nothing. Tom Riddle in the diary shook his head and turned to leave. Tom, who had been a ghost, watched all this happen. After seeing the other party leave, he immediately followed. Finally, Tom Riddle in the diary appeared in front of a door. The dim environment made Tom, who had been following, a little unclear. He only saw the other party talking to a tall boy, and the words were faintly heard by him. Good evening. Hagrid, what are you doing here? Riddle, it's over. Hagrid, I have to report you. Hagrid, if you don't stop the attack, they will close the school. I don't know what you are talking about. Riddle, I also know that you don't want to kill anyone, but the pet you raise is quite dangerous, although I guess you just want it to come out and move around. No, it has never hurt anyone. It's not it. It's not a murderer. Amid the quarrel, Tom Riddle drew out his wand and illuminated the corridor. Then Tom saw a big spider. After a sharp cry, the big spider fled, and Tom Riddle chased after it with his wand raised. Finally, the scene in front of him spun violently in front of Tom. The familiar scene gradually recovered, and Tom found that he was back on the farm. The diary that took him back to 50 years ago lay quietly on the table. Walking over and gently closing the diary, Tom fell into deep thought. Although what he saw was that Hagrid released a monster in the secret room to kill people, he would not believe it so easily. Do you think the other me is so simple? We are both cunning and ambitious guys. The difference is that my ambition and great road are for my father, Tom sneered. Putting down the photo frame with Peter in his hand, a plan gradually formed in his mind. The next day, Hermione found Harry, Mark and Ron. It's Hagrid, Hermione said, something that shocked several people. What? It's Hagrid. Hagrid opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago? Based on the clues provided by Peter, Hermione finally investigated what happened 50 years ago. Impossible, Hagrid can't do such a thing. Harry said that Hagrid is not such a person. Wait? Hermione, you seem a little different today. Ron found that Hermione was a little different today. He pointed at the beautiful diamond-shaped amulet on Hermione's chest. The amulet you are wearing today is very beautiful. Where did you buy it? Hermione blushed slightly and put the necklace amulet into her cashmere coat. It was given to me by a very important person. She glared at Ron. We are talking about very important things. Ron, don't interrupt. Mark next to her thought for a while and asked Hermione, where did you get the information, Hermione? I think Hagrid is an upright and good person. Although he looks like someone who is not easy to approach, he is actually very gentle. I looked through the newspapers from 50 years ago. 50 years ago, there was a rumor circulating in the school that the Chamber of Secrets was opened and non-pure blood wizards would be killed. After that, someone was attacked and a girl died because of it. Ron asked her, who? Myrtle. Chapter 514, Mark's Courage for Ginny. Harry was stunned when he heard Hermione say that Myrtle was the girl who died 50 years ago. He suddenly remembered the horrified expression Myrtle showed when she saw Tom appear at the opening ceremony. And Myrtle also shouted he's coming when she fled. Could it be? He suspected Tom again. But this is impossible. Tom Padrick is Mark's brother and Mr. Padrick's son. He can't be the murderer behind the Chamber of Secrets. The people with different thoughts all fell into silence. Maybe we should ask Hagrid. After a while, Mark said to everyone. At night, Mark, Harry, Ron and Hermione took advantage of the clear night and rushed to the forest hut where Hagrid was. Let Ravin tell his father on his behalf that he would not return to the farm at night. Mark planned to share a bed with Harry for the night. The four hurried to Hagrid's lighted room. It was not until they reached the other side's front door that they pulled down their cloaks. A few seconds after Harry knocked on the door, Hagrid suddenly opened the door. The two stood face to face. Hagrid, who was extremely alert, aimed his bow and arrow at Harry, and the male hound barked loudly in the house. Oh, it's you little guys. Why are you here so late? Hagrid put down his bow with a sigh of relief and asked the few people. We want to talk to you, Hagrid. Harry and the others walked into the house and said to him. Of course, Hagrid asked the few people to sit down, and he poured the hot water boiled on the fire into cups and handed them to the few people one by one. Sorry, I forgot to add tea bags. Hagrid scratched his messy hair and was about to stand up to help the few people add tea bags. No need, Hagrid, we want to ask if you know about the Chamber of Secrets? A similar thing happened in Hogwarts 50 years ago. Legend has it that if the Chamber of Secrets is opened, the monster inside will attack non-pure blood wizards. Hearing this, Hagrid crushed a teacup in his hand with a bang. He quickly stood up and apologized to everyone in a hurry. Sorry, I didn't control my strength well. Hagrid, who was in a mess, cleaned up the broken pieces of the teapot, sat down dejectedly, and said to Harry and the others, it wasn't me. Aragog is a kind animal. It has never hurt anyone. Aragog, Mark asked in confusion. What is that? It's an 8-eyed giant spider, huge in size. Aragog was originally a blind 8-eyed giant spider. I adopted it and kept it in a cupboard in Hogwarts Castle. Later, in the Chamber of Secrets incident, he was framed as the culprit for killing students, but I know that it would never hurt humans. It was, someone put the blame on him. Hagrid sighed. I was expelled from Hogwarts because of this incident, and I have been living here since then. Who framed you, Hagrid? Harry believed that Hagrid was definitely not the murderer, and he frowned and asked him. No, you don't need to know his name. Hagrid hesitated and glanced at Mark. Finally, he stammered, Harry, you better watch out for Tom Padrick. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to say that about your brother. I just felt that way. Mark was stunned when he heard Hagrid tell him to be careful of Tom. After a while, he said to Hagrid, maybe you're wrong, Hagrid. Tom is not a bad person. He's just a little arrogant sometimes. Well, maybe I'm wrong, Hagrid said a little uneasy. Harry, who was holding a glass of water next to him, fell into deep thought. 1 week later. In the morning. Gryffindor students gathered in the hospital wing. Harry, Mark and Ron, who received the news from Professor McGonagall, rushed to the scene. After seeing the tragic scene, Harry's stomach twitched. Madame Pomfrey leaned over a curly-haired fifth-year girl. Next to her, Hermione was lying. Hermione, seeing Hermione lying on the ground, Mark shouted in disbelief. Hermione, who was stiff all over, fell to the ground with her eyes open, as if she had seen something unbelievable. What happened? Harry asked Professor McGonagall next to him. It was Tom Padrick who first discovered it. Professor McGonagall pointed her eyes at Tom, who was calm next to him. Hearing that it was Tom again, Harry froze in his tracks. He looked at Tom in shock. When I was about to go to the library to check, I saw them lying on the ground. Tom glanced at Harry and said in his unique London accent, "There was no one or suspicious creature at the scene at the time." McGonagall reached out and patted Tom on the shoulder to comfort him. She took off her glasses and said in a choked voice, "There is no doubt that I have never been as sad as I am now. If the real culprit behind these attacks cannot be caught, then our school is very likely to be closed." Harry listened to Professor McGonagall's words. His heart was in a mess. He squatted down and found a broken lens next to Hermione. Putting away the lens, he looked at the amulet on Hermione's stiff neck. He found that the beautiful diamond-shaped amulet had disappeared. Mark also cast a heavy gaze on Hermione on the ground. Soon he found that Hermione seemed to have a note in her hand. After looking at the students gathered around, Mark did not say anything, and planned to wait until everyone dispersed before going to see what the note was. Half an hour later, in the infirmary, Harry, Mark, and Ron came to Hermione. While no one was around, Mark took out a note from Hermione's hand. The note was a piece of paper torn from an old book. Mark smoothed it out, and Ron and Harry came over to take a look. Of all the terrible beasts and monsters that roam the world, none is more bizarre or deadly than the basilisk, the king of pythons. The basilisk is gigantic in size and can live for countless centuries. It hatches from eggs in the belly of a toad. The most incredible thing about it is the way it kills. It not only has deadly fangs, but also an extremely dangerous gaze that will kill anyone who comes into contact with its gaze. The basilisk is the natural enemy of spiders, so wherever a basilisk appears, spiders will flee. The crowing of a rooster is deadly to it, so it will flee when it hears the crowing of a cock. After the last line, there was a scribbled word in Hermione's handwriting. Harry took a deep breath when he saw the handwriting on the note. He said to the two excitedly, "I understand. The monster in the chamber is this snake. I understand why I can hear that sound, because I understand snake language. Mark, you only hear strange sounds, but Ron and Hermione can't hear anything at all." Mark pinched his chin and speculated the truth of the deaths of several people. If that's the case, it can also explain why everyone was petrified. Basilisk kills by staring, but no one died, because no one has seen it directly with their eyes. Colin looked at it through the camera and found that Hermione and the fifth-year Carlo had a mirror next to them. Maybe they saw it through the mirror. And the amulet. At this point, Mark immediately figured out why Hermione's amulet disappeared. Hermione's amulet was given by her father. It must be that the basilisk petrified Hermione and tried to hurt Hermione, but was blocked by the amulet. On the other side, looking at the words on the note, Harry started to associate. Maybe it's the water pipes. The big snake may have come through the sewers. I've heard that kind of sound in the wall. Harry guessed at what Hermione wanted to tell everyone was water pipes. After guessing the clues left by Hermione, Harry's brows soon frowned again. Besides himself, there are also descendants of Slytherin who can understand Parseltongue. Soon he thought of Tom again. That day in the fighting club, he saw that Tom could also speak Parseltongue. Why are all the clues related to Tom Padrick? Is he really the real murderer behind the scenes? If he is, what should Mark do? Should he force him to kill his own relatives for the sake of justice? Scratching his head, Harry fell into distress. When he was playing Quidditch, he let Mark play against Raven. If he forced him to play against Tom this time, it seemed too cruel for Mark to go against his brother and sister every time. In the afternoon, Mark received worse news. Ginny disappeared. And it is very likely that she has been taken to the Chamber of Secrets. Ron, who heard the news, slid off his chair and collapsed to the ground. Mark held his wand tightly, his face pale. "Hey, classmates, did I miss anything?" Lockhart pushed the door open and said to everyone happily. Everyone looked at him with hatred. Snape had been enduring this guy for a long time. He stepped forward and grabbed the other's collar. "Very good, Professor Lockhart, now we have encountered a critical situation. A girl has been captured. Now it's your turn to show your power." Hearing Snape's words, Lockhart's face turned pale instantly. "Well, I haven't been feeling well lately, which may affect my spellcasting." The sinister Professor McGonagall next to him pretended to be puzzled and asked him, "Didn't you say you knew what was in the Chamber of Secrets? And that you could handle it with one hand? Did I say that?" "I don't seem to remember." Looking at the serious faces of Snape and Professor McGonagall, Lockhart looked bitter. "I really didn't say that. You may have misunderstood." "This is not a misunderstanding. Get ready." Snape would naturally not let this guy go, and was ready to force him to stay in school to fight the monster. "Okay." Professor McGonagall clapped her hands and said to the students of Gryffindor College, "Tomorrow morning, all students will be sent home by express train. From now on, Hogwarts will be suspended indefinitely." Mark took a deep breath, clenched his fists, raised his hands and mustered up the courage to stand up. "Professor McGonagall, I want to stay." For Ginny, he decided to do something he would not regret. Chapter 515, The Secret Room is opened. Mark and Riven go out together. "This is a very dangerous behavior, Mr. Patrick. For your safety, I suggest you leave the school as soon as possible." Professor McGonagall came over and patted Mark on the shoulder. After announcing the news to the students, Professor McGonagall left the hall. Mark, holding his fist, looked at Harry with a heavy heart. Harry looked at him, took a deep breath and said to him, "I will help you, Mark. Let's go together to rescue Ginny." "Thank you, Harry." Hearing that Harry was willing to help him, Mark felt a warm current in his heart. "We are friends, and we will fight together at any time." Harry smiled at him and said. Finally, the three of them discussed it and decided to go and seek Raven's help. Raven is Mark's sister, and she is the most powerful magical student among the students they are familiar with. As long as Raven is willing to help them, the possibility of Ginny being rescued will increase greatly. "But she is a Slytherin," Ron said, a little frustrated. He no longer has any confidence in whether his sister is still alive. "Perhaps, Mark, why don't you go home and ask Mr. Padraic for help?" After listening to Mark's story about Peter, Ron felt that the person who was most likely to solve the problem at hand was Peter. "We can solve it." Mark came up to encourage Ron. "Hope is not completely cut off now. If we go back and forth to ask for help from our father, Ginny may not be able to hold on any longer." After persuading Ron, Mark and his friends went to Slytherin to find Raven. But when they walked to Professor Lockhart's office, they found Lockhart packing his bedding and preparing to run away. All of Lockhart's exquisite dresses were randomly stuffed into a suitcase. Various books were randomly stuffed into another suitcase. He also took down the photos hanging on his wall and stuffed them into the suitcase. "Where are you going?" Mark saw his behavior and asked him with a frown. Yes. I have to act immediately," Lockhart replied, tearing down a poster of himself hanging behind the door and quickly rolling it up. "Sorry, I got an emergency call. I can't help it. I have to go." Harry asked him in confusion, "Where's Professor Snape?" "He was called away by Headmaster Dumbledore." "Thank God, I don't want to see him again." "What about my sister?" Ron asked anxiously. "Sorry, Ron, I feel sad about what happened to your sister." "Believe me, no one is more sad than me." Lockhart packed his things faster. Harry seemed to know him for the first time and said in shock, "You are the professor of defense against the dark arts. You can't leave. Your books describe you as a hero." "Books may also mislead people," Lockhart said carefully. "You're a liar." Mark immediately realized that this guy was an out-and-out liar. He roared, "You've deceived everyone." After being scolded by Mark, Lockhart straightened up and frowned. "Children, you don't understand anything. This society is not as simple as you think. If I don't say that it was me who did it, will my book sell? People like to pursue vanity, and I just tell them a beautiful story to shape their expectations, but this is not easy," Lockhart said with a serious expression. "These stories are other people's. The wizard who defeated the werewolf was a sloppy guy, and the one who drove away the goblin was a witch with a cleft lip. I want to take their stories as my own. I have to follow them, ask them how they did it, and then cast a forgetting spell on them. If you want to gain fame and fortune, you have to be prepared for a hard and busy life." With a bang, He closed the suitcase, turned around, and looked at the stunned three people. I don't know when the wand came into his hand. Sorry, kids, even though I don't want to do that, I have to cast the Oblivion Charm on you, otherwise you might tell my secrets everywhere, and then my next book won't sell. Shaking his head, Lockhart was ready to cast the Oblivion Charm on the three people. As a result, the next second, Mark's fist came directly to his face. Bang! Lockhart, who couldn't dodge in time, was hit hard. He was hit in the eye socket and fell to the ground. At the same time, Harry quickly took out his wand and knocked out the opponent's wand. Expelliarmus. Ron also reacted, rushed to him and grabbed his arm. You bastard! Ron was angry and couldn't help kicking him. Lockhart groaned in pain, and was pointed at by Harry with his wand. He covered his eye sockets and raised his head. What do you want to do? Come with us to save people. Mark came over and grabbed his collar. This guy can be used as a pathfinder. I don't know where the Chamber of Secrets is. I'm incompetent and talentless, Lockhart said, curled up. Get up. Mark pulled him up. The three escorted Lockhart to Slytherin to find Raven. When Lockhart walked to the corridor of Slytherin College, he pushed Ron hard and rushed into the dark corridor. Seeing Lockhart running away, Mark and others were stunned for a moment and hurried to chase him. As dusk approached, night gradually fell. Panting heavily, Lockhart ran all the way in the dark corridor. As a result, a green magic energy flashed by in the next second. Lockhart, who was directly hit by the spell, stopped immediately, and a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. Who am I? Where am I? Suddenly, a pair of hands suddenly stretched out from the shadows and pulled him into the darkness. When Mark and others chased into the corridor, they saw that Lockhart was about to go downstairs to escape, but he was tripped by a protruding stone and fell heavily to the ground with a bang. Harry and others hurried up to control him. You liar, you're still not honest. Ron, who was running out of breath, raised his foot and kicked the other man a few more times. After recaptured Lockhart, Mark took him and went to Slytherin College to find Raven and told him about their findings. So you want to find the Chamber of Secrets, rescue Ginny, and then kill the basilisk? Raven was followed by several female followers. She asked the female followers to go back first and asked Mark with a frown. Yes, we must hurry up and rescue Ginny, Mark said with a deep breath. This is too dangerous, Mark, you are just a first-year student, you shouldn't be involved in such things. Raven glanced at Lockhart, who was secretly pointed at by Ron with his wand behind his back. If Dag knew, he wouldn't allow you to do this. Raven thought for a moment and said, you can go back first, I'll go find Ginny. No, Mark shook his head and refused. I won't retreat, even if you are petrified and killed by the snake. Yes, sister, didn't Dad say that no matter what choice we make, we will face a price in the end? If I choose to stay, this price may be very high, but for Ginny and my friends, I am willing to bear such a high price. Listening to Mark's words, Raven was slightly stunned. So I said, you are not brave, but reckless to die, but... Raven sighed slightly. Who made you my brother? Do you have any clues? About the location of the secret room, Raven asked the three about the location of the secret room. Hearing that Raven was willing to help, they all breathed a sigh of relief. According to the clues left by Hermione, the basilisk should have entered through the underground pipes. I guess it might be a place like a toilet or a bathroom. In addition, Myrtle was killed by the basilisk. We can ask her for clues, Harry told Raven his guess. Well, we can only try. Soon they arrived near a bathroom. Since Myrtle often cried near the toilets in this area, they found her easily. Myrtle, who was sitting on the toilet tank at the last stall in the bathroom, was a little surprised to see them coming. Is it you? What's the matter, Myrtle, in spirit form? Asked everyone. We want to know how you died, Harry asked her. Oh, this is terrible. Myrtle's tone changed immediately. My death happened here. I died in this small room. I remember it very clearly. I hid because they always made fun of my glasses. The door was locked. I was crying inside. Then, I heard someone come in. What they said was very strange. I heard a boy's voice. I wanted to open the door and tell him that there was someone here. Then, Myrtle became depressed. I died, dead. What happened? Mark asked in shock. I don't know. I just remember that I seemed to see a pair of huge yellow eyes. Then I floated away. Where did you see it? Harry asked her anxiously. There. Probably, I don't remember, Myrtle said vaguely. She pointed to a sink next to her. Raven immediately came over and checked the sink. This was a copper pipe faucet that could not be unscrewed and could no longer be used. Raven found a small snake engraved on the faucet. Staring at the tiny snake sculpture in front of her, Raven pondered for a moment and recited a spell. After several attempts, nothing happened. "Let me do it." Harry took a deep breath and looked at the snake sculpture. Ordinary spells were useless, so maybe he could try his parcel tongue. He hypnotized himself that the snake sculpture in front of him was alive. "Turn it on." Harry spoke parcel tongue, accompanied by a strange hissing sound from his mouth. In an instant, the faucet was covered in a brilliant white light and began to rotate. Chapter 516, Tom, you, a father-hungry person, have you really betrayed your father? After the sink sank, a dark passage was revealed. Raven and the others looked at the secret room that suddenly appeared in astonishment. "It's open now?" "You," Mark pointed his wand at Lockhart next to him, "you go down first." The pale-faced Lockhart looked at the dark passage and swallowed his saliva. "That, kids, I think you can think carefully about it. I don't know anything. Going down may hinder us." "Mark, Raven, I have a good relationship with your father, don't give me that." Mark pushed him. Lockhart, who slid into the pipe, screamed and disappeared directly into the dark depths. After confirming that the other party was not in any danger, Mark took a deep breath and entered the pipe second. Then Harry, Ron and Raven entered the deep pipe one after another. In the twisting and rotating pipe, Mark slid down steeply. After sliding for a distance, he could clearly feel that he was far away from the school. With a bang, he heard the sound of Harry falling at the corner behind him. After sliding for a distance, Mark landed heavily on the ground. It was pitch black all around, with a strange and weird atmosphere. Lockhart, who came down first, was covered in mud and panting slightly. After everyone came down, Mark looked around and said to the others, "I think we are far away from the school. I guess it's the bottom of the lake." Raven reached out and touched the wet wall. "Anyway, be careful." As she spoke, she took out her wand. As she whispered the spell, the top of the wand emitted a light that pierced the darkness. As the others walked forward, Ron lowered his head carefully. With a weak light, he found that what he saw were the skeletons of some small animals. Ugh, the unbearable smell coming from the surroundings, and thinking that his sister might also end up like this, made him want to vomit. "Hold on, Ron, we're almost at the end," Mark comforted him from the side. Ron took a deep breath and said to Mark, "Well, maybe you can tell me if you have encountered similar things. Give me some confidence and I might feel better." "Mark, didn't you say that your father took you through many dangerous things?" Mark thought for a while and looked at Raven. "In fact, my sister and father have experienced more adventures. They have also been to the underworld together." Raven almost became someone else's bride. If my father hadn't rescued Raven in time, maybe something bad would have happened. I think the environment in the underworld should be worse than this. Raven should be able to cope with it. In order to ease Ron's tension, Mark whispered to him about Raven's story. "Bride." Hearing Mark's words, Harry and Ron opened their mouths in astonishment. "Shut up. Snitch. If you say that again, I'll let you fly." Raven turned around and glared at this calendar with dissatisfaction. After being glared at by Raven, Mark immediately shut his mouth obediently. After that, the few people walked through another curved road, and a solid wall appeared in front of them. There were two snakes entwined with each other carved on the wall. The black snake eyes were inlaid with sparkling emeralds. "I guess you need your parcel tongue to open these mechanisms, Harry." Raven cast her eyes on Harry. Harry nodded and walked forward. He felt his throat was a little dry. He took a deep breath and used his imagination to imagine that these stone snakes were real and that the snake's eyes were vivid in front of him. Then, under the gaze of several people, Harry cleared his throat. "Open," he said to the building in front of him in a low and weak hissing snake-like voice. As he spoke, the wall cracked in the middle and a passage appeared in front of several people. Several people entered a fairly large stone room. The space here was quite large and dimly lit. The towering stone pillars were wrapped with exquisitely carved stone pythons. Mark and Harry, who were a little nervous, took out their wands. Ron pointed his wand at Lockhart and asked him to go in front. After walking a few steps forward, everyone saw a huge statue. This statue, which was almost flush with a roof, was quite old. Its sparse beard hung straight down to the ground. Its two gray legs stood on the smooth floor of the stone room. And just below the stone statue, a thin girl with red hair was lying face down. Ginny, seeing Ginny's figure, Mark immediately ran over excitedly and hugged her. No. No. Ginny, wake up, please, don't die like this. Kneeling down, putting the wand on the ground, Mark hugged Ginny's shoulders and said with a trembling voice. He could feel that Ginny's face was as cold as marble. Ginny closed her eyes, but fortunately she did not turn into a stone statue. Ginny, please wake up. Mark, who was in great pain, shook Ginny's head and called her painfully. Raven came over and put her hand on Mark's shoulder. Mark, calm down, Ginny is still alive. Hearing Raven say that Ginny was still alive, Mark's despair immediately rose to hope. Really? Sister, of course it's true, Mark, she's still alive, but that's all. Suddenly, a familiar voice reached everyone's ears. Shocked, Raven and Mark looked up and saw Tom, who was slowly walking out of the shadows with an expressionless face. Tom, the two showed incomprehensible expressions on their faces. Raven asked in disbelief, why is it you, Tom? Tom looked at the two with an expressionless face. Why, is it strange that I'm here? Mark saw Tom, but didn't notice anything wrong. He shouted to him, Tom, come here, we need to act together. A smile appeared on Tom's lips, and he nodded, I'll be right over. Imagination power. The next second, Tom raised his wand and shot a spell at Harry. Harry, who was unable to dodge, was caught off guard and was knocked back, and fell on the smooth ground with a bang. Seeing Harry suddenly being knocked away by Tom, Mark looked at him in shock. What are you doing, Tom? As you can see, Mark, I'm helping to resolve the irrelevant people who are affecting the communication between our family members, Tom said with a calm expression. Ahem. Harry, who fell to the ground, staggered to his feet despite the pain. He looked at Tom with angry eyes. It's you. You are the real culprit behind everything. It was you who released the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. You were at the scene when Colin and Hermione were petrified. Hagrid asked me to be careful of you, and you also understand snake language. You are the real culprit behind it. Tom, you almost guessed the real murderer, Harry, but it's not enough. Tom shook his head and said to the dark shadow behind him, Riddle, come out. In the eyes of everyone who was even more stunned, a thin and handsome young man with black hair walked out of the shadow. The young man, who looked gentle and cold, and looked very similar to Tom, slowly walked out of the shadow. You guys. Looking at the young man who was simply another copy of Tom Patrick, Harry, Raven and Mark were all stunned. Even Lockhart looked incredulous. How could there be two Toms? Although they were of different heights, it was obvious that they were the same person. Temperament and image never lie. The young man walked out of the shadows and said to Harry, Are you surprised? Harry, we are the same person. How is it possible? Nothing is impossible. My name is Tom M. Riddle, and as for Padraic, the young man turned his gaze to Tom next to him. Padraic's name is Tom Padraic, but you may not know that his previous name was the same as mine. Harry listened to the other party's incredible words and looked at Raven. What is going on? He didn't understand why there were two Toms. Raven didn't say anything. She frowned and asked Tom, Who is he? It's a long story. Tom took out a black diary. About half a month ago, I picked up a diary in the bathroom. Later, I found that I could talk to the diary. There's a soul from 50 years ago sealed in it. The name of this soul is Tom Riddle, which was my name before I was adopted by my father. The strange thing is that I have never written a diary like this, but, Tom looked at Raven. I think you should understand what's going on. This should be the principle of parallel worlds. If I hadn't been adopted by my father 50 years ago, I would have developed along this world line and become Voldemort, and then been killed by a baby. Fortunately, because of my father in the parallel world, I left the orphanage and did not become Voldemort. I lived on a farm and had a different life. This diary is the diary written by another me in this world 50 years ago. Raven listened to the other party's explanation and quickly understood. Is he a ghost? No. Tom shook his head. He is a memory from 50 years ago. Ron, who was standing next to him, was confused. He supported Harry and asked in a low voice, What do they mean? Harry swallowed nervously and said, I don't know. I guess Tom is Tom Riddle from a parallel world, but he was adopted by Mr. Padraic and changed his name. Ron suddenly felt a surge of despair in his heart. He just heard Tom say that Tom Riddle was Voldemort. Now that the two Voldemorts have merged here, aren't they completely finished? Tom Riddle, in the form of a diary, looked at Raven and Mark with great interest. It's incredible that your father can travel through different parallel worlds. I really want to meet him. Chapter 517, Avada eats a big melon for the first time. Tom Riddle in the diary said with great interest, I heard from another me that your father is the god of dreams. He can give many people beautiful dreams, but he can also drag different people into nightmares. I never thought that another me would have a farm life in the United States. His eyes flickered with a glimmer, and soon his face became ferocious. But his beautiful dreams only bring false hope to mankind. The promises he made and the expectations for the good are nothing but false illusions. He doesn't understand me. Even if it is the me in another world, the ambitions and desires we have for the world, he will never be able to satisfy them. Listening to the words of Tom Riddle in the form of a diary, Mark looked at the silent Tom in shock. Tom, are you going to betray your father? Tom replied, you have forgotten one important thing. I was born from a love potion. I cannot feel love, so, what's so strange about someone like me doing such a thing? No. You are lying, Mark said with a red face. If you were like Voldemort in this world, without emotions, you would not have released the Patronus spell when fighting Hecate before. Dad has always loved you, but you treated him with lies and betrayal. Just imagine how sad he would be. Mark raised his wand angrily. Just think about it, Tom, in that rainy London, in that small house, with a slowly falling off wall outside the window, the sun could not warm you, and you refused to step out, and no one took you out. It was Dad who took you out of that house. This is not you. I can feel that you have been bewitched by him, Tom. Tom looked at him and said in a cold tone, I know clearly what I am doing, Raven, Mark. It's not that I don't have feelings for my father, but this feeling has always been selfish. I can kill you and then have my father's love alone. He's right. Not only will we kill you, but also Harry. Tom Riddle in the form of a diary looked at Harry and said slowly, how did a baby with no extraordinary magical talent defeat the greatest wizard? Harry, how can you have almost no damage except a scar, while Voldemort's body was completely destroyed? Tell me. Harry was supported by Ron, glaring at him with gritted teeth. Very good, it seems that you are very stubborn, but your life will soon end here. Tom Riddle in the diary smiled. I will absorb your soul, Harry, and then I will be resurrected. Tom, the two of us will cooperate with each other and make the entire wizarding world submit to a rule. I should thank Peter Padrick for sending me such a powerful helper. With his whisper, the giant stone face of Slytherin began to move. Tom, who was next to him, heard him recite the spell to summon the snake, and his expression changed slightly. Everyone saw that the mouth of the stone statue opened wider and wider until a huge dark and deep hole appeared. Something seemed to be rolling inside the black hole of the statue, and then slid up from the depths. Harry soon saw that it was the giant snake that could petrify people. Kill them. Tom Riddle, in the form of a diary, gave an order to the giant snake. The heavy body of the giant snake attacked Raven and her group. Raven gritted her teeth and raised her wand. Flying sand and running rocks, as she released a powerful magic spell, the black energy instantly attacked the giant snake. Facing Raven's attack, Tom immediately counterattacked. Stupefy, released a magic spell. Tom attacked Raven. Bang! The magic energy of the Stupefy spell brushed past Raven's body and hit the giant stone statue behind Raven heavily. Facing Tom's attack, Raven was furious, and the tip of the wand condensed a more powerful magic energy. The soul crow was released by him, a huge black crow. The soul and magic power intertwined with each other, emitting a whistling and sharp magic energy, overwhelming the sky. Tom released the iron armor charm and dodged backwards. Raven's attack followed him closely. Seeing him dodge, a flying sand and rocks magic continued to bombard him, hitting Tom's body and knocking him back. On the other side, Mark, Harry, and Ron were entangled by the giant snake. The giant snake was a dark magic creature cultivated by wizards, with amazing power and deadly toxicity. What's more difficult is that anyone who is stared at by its eyes will die immediately. Harry closed his eyes and tried to dodge, but fell down all of a sudden. Falling heavily on the stone slab, Harry felt that the giant python was only a few feet away from him. Seeing Harry in danger, Mark raised his wand and shot an explosive spell at the opponent. With a boom, the magic released by Mark was cast on the giant snake, which only made its body stagger. The giant snake with super strong defense only has relatively weak weaknesses in the eyes and jaws, and other parts have strong resistance to magic. Bang! The giant snake's tail instantly smashed the giant eagle to pieces, and Mark, who was hiding behind it, fell to the ground with a rebel splashing. Seeing that Mark and his group were in danger, Raven pushed Tom back and wanted to help. However, The giant snake's sharp teeth had already attacked Harry. Harry, who felt a fishy smell, suddenly closed his eyes and dared not look at the other party. At the critical moment, Lockhart, who had been hiding in the dark, suddenly raised his wand and released a powerful magic. The dazzling green magic energy hit the giant snake's head. Boom! The giant snake staggered back after being hit, and then an invisible force controlled Harry, lifted him into the air, and then pulled him to Lockhart's side. Seeing Lockhart, who only knew how to cast the forgetfulness spell, showing his power, Harry and Ron were all stunned. Is this still the liar, Professor? In the astonished eyes of the two, Professor Lockhart's face retreated like a green tide, revealing his true self. It seems that our savior is a little embarrassed. Loki looked at Harry with a playful look on his face. Seeing Professor Lockhart transformed into Loki, Harry and Ron opened their mouths in shock. Mark in the distance was also stunned. What's going on? You are Loki? Harry asked, covering his chest. It turned out to be Loki from Hufflepuff, who had been pretending to be Lockhart. A scene flashed through his mind. In the Slytherin corridor, when Lockhart escaped, he disappeared from their sight for a while. It was probably at this time that Loki pretended to be Lockhart. But how did he do it? Was it the Polyjuice Potion? But the duration of the transformation of the Polyjuice Potion is 1 hour. Since they entered the Chamber of Secrets, it has been more than 1 hour. And how did Loki pretend to be Professor Lockhart without being discovered? Sure enough, no one in the Padraic family is a simple character. It's the real deal, Mr. Potter. Loki cast his eyes on the snake and said casually, "Hide behind me, Mr. Potter. Or you will turn into a stone statue and I will be hunted down by your little fans to the ends of the earth." Loki has been coveting the snake in front of him for a long time. Otherwise, he would not have been investigating secretly for so long, and would not have used the Oblivion spell to attack Lockhart, and then pretended to be the other party to sneak into the secret room. What he didn't expect was that Tom was hiding so deeply. The notebook thrown away by Ginny actually fell into his hands. Loki originally thought that he was a bit dark and rebellious, but he didn't expect that Tom was even more dark and cunning than himself. On the other side, Raven was a little shocked at first when she saw Professor Lockhart turned into Loki. But after thinking that Loki usually had this character, she quickly calmed down. After releasing a flying sand and rolling stone spell, Raven flew towards the giant snake. Raven, Mark and Loki began to beat the giant snake. Shoo-it! The dazzling and powerful magic energy heavily bombarded the giant snake. The enraged giant snake spewed out a mouthful of poisonous smoke and attacked Mark. Loki immediately controlled the magic wand, grabbed Mark's body, and pulled him back in midair. The giant snake roared, smashed the nearby giant stone statues, and rushed towards the few people with its huge yellow lantern eyes. Loki immediately closed his eyes and stepped back, but the stone fragments smashed by the giant snake splashed and hit his body and flew backwards. Soul Crow, Raven gritted her teeth, making sure her eyes did not make contact with the giant snake, while releasing powerful black magic. Bang! The giant snake's body was hit hard by Raven and flew out. The roar resounded in the secret room, and the enraged giant snake suddenly hit the ground with its tail. Mark was unstable and was grabbed by Raven when he fell backwards. The next second, the giant snake swam over like lightning. On the other side, Tom Riddle in the form of Diary saw that the giant snake could not take down the three siblings, and frowned and said to Tom, "Tom, go help it." He thought Tom was bewitched by him, so he was not on guard. After all, Ginny was bewitched by him to open the Chamber of Secrets, and Tom's performance just now also made him very satisfied. Tom nodded, drew out his wand and walked forward. The next second, Tom, who was pointing his wand at Raven, suddenly turned the tip of the wand and pointed it at Tom Riddle in the form of Diary. Tom Riddle, who had originally had a confident expression on his face, was stunned when he saw the other party pointing the wand at him, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. Avada eats the big melon. A green spell flashing with a powerful magical aura hit the body of Tom Riddle in the Diary. Looking down at his slowly fading soul, Tom Riddle's face was full of disbelief. "This is the unforgivable curse you taught me. It's not bad when I use it on you for the first time." Tom looked at him coldly. "You don't think I will really be bewitched by you and believe your talk of conquering the wizarding world, idiot. I'm just using you, and you dare to comment on my father." Chapter 518, Inheriting the Family Business. Who can beat you, Tom? Tom's sudden betrayal shocked Raven and the others. Harry stood behind a statue, looking at Tom Riddle casting a spell at the Diary, and opened his mouth in astonishment. What? Are you surprised, Riddle? Tom held the notebook, looking at Riddle, whose soul was about to dissipate, with a cold expression. You are right about one thing, we are all ambitious and cunning people. You pretended to have to listen to the ridiculous little troubles of an 11-year-old girl. Tom slowly put away his wand. You pretended to be very patient, compassionate, and kind, so that Ginny believed and trusted you. No one can understand me like you, Riddle. I am so glad that I can reveal my feelings in the diary. This is why I have a friend I can carry with me. Tom showed a sneer at the corner of his mouth. You disguised yourself so thoroughly that Ginny gave you her soul. You fed on her deepest fears and darkest secrets, and your power grew stronger and stronger. For this reason, Ginny Weasley opened the Hall of Mysteries, strangled the school's rooster, wrote threatening messages on the walls, led the Slytherin Python to the four people, and the cat, Harry, on the other side, was struck by lightning when he heard what Tom said. It turned out that Ginny did all this. It was Ginny who did these things under the instigation of Tom Riddle in the diary. At this moment, Harry suddenly felt regret and annoyance in his heart. It turned out that the murderer he identified was someone else. But he had been dragged down by prejudice and believed that Tom was the murderer. Tom looked at Tom Riddle, who was astonished and incredulous, and continued, It took little fool Ginny a long time to stop trusting her diary, but she finally began to doubt and wanted to throw it away. It was then that I joined in. I found this diary, and you were a little frustrated, because of all the people who might pick up this diary. Only Harry Potter was the one you most wanted to see, but after you knew that I was another you were also very happy, and you tried to convince me to join your evil plan, but you got one very important thing wrong, that is, our personalities are similar, ambitious and cunning, cruel and indifferent, controlled by a strong desire to dominate. You should have understood earlier that I am not someone like Ginny who is easily bewitched by you. There was a hint of contempt in Tom's eyes. I pretended to be a yes man who obeyed your orders and pretended to be interested in your ambitious plans, but in fact, I was just using you to get what I wanted. Tom Riddle, who was deceived and backstabbed by Tom, let out a long, painful, crazy scream, and his increasingly dim soul pounced towards Tom. Crucio, the red evil magic energy whistled sharply in the air and hit Tom Riddle's soul heavily. Tom Riddle, who was hit again, fell to the ground and lost his voice. His soul gradually dissipated. You are just a humble ghost, and my father is Peter Padrick. I am proud of him, his name and honor. I will not allow anyone to sully what I received from my father. You can never give and replace a despicable and stupid guy like you. There is only one end. As Tom said this, Tom Riddle in the form of a diary, disappeared completely in the mood of unwillingness and resentment. Ginny's wand, which he was holding, fell to the floor with a thump. There was a moment of silence around. Then Tom raised his head and looked at the stunned Harry and others. He recited the spell to control the big snake that he had just obtained from the diary of Tom Riddle. The hissing snake language came out of his mouth. The giant snake, hearing Tom's voice, suddenly stopped attacking Raven and the others, retreated, and swam to the entrance of the giant statue. After looking at Tom, the new master, the giant snake went into the dark passage. Raven opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but suddenly a faint groan came from the depths of the stone chamber. Mark looked deep inside and found that Ginny, who had been unconscious, suddenly moved. Seeing Ginny wake up, Mark hurried forward to help her up. Ginny woke up and looked at the mess in the room after the battle, and then looked at Mark, whose arm was injured and bleeding. Then her eyes fell on the diary in Tom's hand, and tears suddenly flowed down. I'm sorry, Mark, I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. Riddle wouldn't let me say it. I swear I didn't mean to. He controlled me. It's okay, Ginny. Mark comforted her. It's all over. Tom Riddle is dead. No, Mark, I will be expelled from school. Help up by Mark. Ginny cried and said, ever since Bill came to school, I have always dreamed of coming to Hogwarts, but now I will be expelled, and my parents will be very disappointed in me. Bill, William Weasley, the eldest son of the Weasley family, seeing his sister crying, Ron, who had not yet recovered from Tom's counterattack, finally woke up. He walked quickly to his sister and comforted her with Mark. On the other side, Raven walked towards Tom. Glancing in the direction where the giant snake disappeared into the darkness, Raven asked with a complicated expression, now you are the master of the giant snake, right? Yes, so your goal all along has been that giant snake. Tom stared at him with cold eyes and shook his head slowly. Not only that, I just hate him. Yes, I hate him, just like when you see another person who is completely different from you, The emotions you produce are also disgust and hatred. He is selfish, cruel, demanding, afraid of death and pursuing eternal life. He treats his followers like servants and has absolute dominance. He never forgives mistakes and will use all means to punish. He has no colleagues, no friends, no relatives, only a group of followers who are infected with his desires. He is not me, and my life will never be like his. Tom looked at Loki and Mark walking towards him, and a different emotion flashed in his cold eyes. He even killed his own father and bewitched me to attack his own father, so I decided to let him taste the taste of being betrayed when he was proud, and let him try the taste of the unforgivable spell that he was most proud of. Loki listened to Tom's words and looked at Raven. Although this kid stole his big snake, Loki's dissatisfaction in his heart suddenly dissipated a lot after hearing the other party's words. Although I can understand what you said, when you used Tom Riddle before, you involved everyone. I even suspect that you also captured Ginny. You put everyone's lives in danger. Raven felt that Tom was 100 times more insidious than Loki. Compared with him now, Loki is considered a good man. Raven looked at him unhappily. If you had told Dad about this, the matter would have been resolved long ago, but you didn't. I will tell Dad about this and let him judge whether what you did was right or wrong. Loki next to him added. Also, Tom, the unforgivable curse you just used is strictly prohibited in the wizarding world. You broke the law. Hearing that Raven was going to be an informer, Tom's face changed slightly. Then his eyebrows moved slightly, and he turned and walked out of the secret room. My previous behavior was bewitched by Tom Riddle. I am a victim like Ginny. Raven, why didn't she realize that this guy is also a shameless person? Late at night, Harry and his group walked out of the secret room and heard a scream. Ginny, Mrs. Weasley's voice came. She strode towards her daughter. Arthur Weasley followed behind, and both rushed towards their daughter. Mark was covered in mud. He looked up and saw Headmaster Dumbledore standing by the mantel, smiling. Next to him stood Professor McGonagall, who was covering her chest with her hands and breathing heavily. Next to Professor McGonagall stood his father. Dad. Mark ran up excitedly and threw himself into Peter's arms. Peter was covered in mud, but he didn't care. Instead, he gently patted Mark's head in his arms. Then he looked at Raven, Loki and Tom. Raven and the others came over and surrounded Peter excitedly. Raven, who couldn't bear it any longer, threw herself into Peter's arms like Mark did. Loki stood there a little reservedly. Tom breathed a sigh of relief. When he saw Peter appear, his tense nerves finally relaxed. You did a great job, especially you, Mark. You and Harry found the passage to the Chamber of Secrets. Peter praised Mark. An hour ago, Raven and the other four had not returned to the farm. Peter, who sensed that something might happen, immediately summoned the school bus to rush to the school. Through the sand placed on Mark, Peter roughly heard what happened in the Chamber of Secrets. Looking at Tom, who had a calm expression, Peter felt a little complicated. This naughty kid is really asking for trouble. He actually used Tom Riddle in the diary to play a spy plan. Harry's guess was right. In the first half of the story, Tom Riddle in the diary used Ginny to make trouble, but when Tom picked up the diary, it was probably Tom who was behind it. This naughty kid is so scheming. If he inherits the family business in the future, who among Raven, Mark, and Azu can beat him? But he couldn't accuse him of doing anything wrong. As long as he scolded him, this kid would probably use the excuse of I was bewitched by Voldemort to excuse himself. Tom, come here. Peter glanced at Dumbledore and pretended to be angry. Look at what you have done. You have violated 100 school rules. Chapter 519 Tom, go further on the road of love. Tom was stunned when he heard Peter's words. After a moment, he understood Peter's intention and looked at Dumbledore calmly. I'm sorry, Dad, I made some mistakes, but that was not my intention. Seeing Peter criticizing Tom, Mark hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, Dad, Headmaster, Professor McGonagall, we also made mistakes. This is not Tom's fault alone. Ginny heard Mark's words in her parents' arms, and took the courage to say to everyone, Professor McGonagall, Headmaster Dumbledore, it was Mark, Harry and Tom who saved me. All of this, everything happened because of me. Hearing Ginny's words, Professor McGonagall looked around at everyone suspiciously. They saved you? So, what happened, Harry? Come on, you come and tell everyone what happened. Professor McGonagall asked Harry to come out and tell her what happened. Harry stood up nervously, looked at Dumbledore and said, that, because we are worried about Ginny's situation. Harry took a deep breath and took the initiative to tell everyone about his experience in the Chamber of Secrets, including how he and Mark got a clue from the note in Hermione's hand, how the three of them took Professor Lockhart to the Chamber of Secrets, and until Tom suddenly woke up and attacked Tom Riddle in the diary. After listening to Harry's story, everyone fell into silence. Dumbledore cast a meaningful look at Tom, who had a calm face. A ray of moonlight flashed on his half-moon glasses. What an unexpected ending. I am most interested in it. He cast his eyes on Tom. Tom, how did you finally wake up under his bewitching? Professor McGonagall also cast a shocked look at Tom. She has always suspected that the student who was concerned by Dumbledore was related to the mysterious man 12 years ago. Now she heard that the other party actually took the initiative to kill Tom Riddle in the diary, and her face was full of disbelief. I just thought of what my father said to me, so I woke up in the end, Tom lied without changing his face. What? The most powerful magic in this world is love. Tom Riddle in the diary said that he has the most powerful wizard power. I think, no matter how powerful he is, he can't be as powerful as the magic my father said. Listening to what Tom said, Dumbledore was slightly stunned. Professor McGonagall's expression softened. After a while, she asked Tom, Tom, do you know what the two spells you cast are? Tom pretended not to understand. No, I don't know. He told me in the diary at the time that these were just two very powerful spells, and asked me not to use them easily. Professor McGonagall did not doubt it. She sighed slightly and said, those two spells are unforgivable curses. They are banned by the Ministry of Magic. If you use this kind of spell, you will be imprisoned in Azkaban. So, Professor McGonagall looked at the Wheel Eyes and Ron and others. I hope everyone will not tell others about Tom's use of these two spells. Harry and Ron nodded. The Wheel Eyes also promised to keep it secret. Tom, give me the diary. Peter asked Tom to hand the diary to him. Tom nodded, took out the black diary from his arms and handed it to him. After Peter took it, he flipped through a few pages of the damp diary and handed it to Dumbledore. Dumbledore took the diary and lowered his head to read it carefully. Observing the diary, Dumbledore said with emotion, Tom Riddle, he is probably the smartest student in the history of Hogwarts. He looked at the confused Wheel Eyes and Harry. Few people know that Voldemort was once called Riddle 50 years ago. I was his teacher at Hogwarts. I believed that he would achieve good results in the future and make everyone he knew proud of him, but after leaving school, he disappeared. He went to a very far place. He immersed himself in the dark arts and made friends with a group of dark wizards. Holding the diary in his hand, Dumbledore fell into memories of the past. He said with a heavy heart, after that, he transformed into the dark wizard Voldemort. At that time, only his appearance was recognizable. Almost no one would associate Voldemort with the smart boy he once was. That's not your fault, Professor Dumbledore. You can't see through a person who has evil intentions from the beginning. He is cold-blooded, cruel, indifferent to all feelings, and very conceited, self-willed, and despises all creatures except pure-blood wizards. He looks down on them from the bottom of his heart. After a moment of silence, Tom said to Dumbledore seriously, I can feel his character in his diary. Dumbledore listened to Tom's words, as if he knew Tom all over again. He walked to Tom and touched his hair. You are right, Tom, his character has flaws. Sometimes, power does not mean everything. When we walk on the road of life, chasing power is not the only thing. He knows nothing about the power of love. He thinks that art is the first and Tao is discarded. He has been pursuing the so-called power without paying attention to the main thing. On the road of power and immortality, perhaps, he has gone a long way, but on the journey of love, he has hardly stepped out of the same place. Dumbledore showed a trace of tenderness in his eyes, gently stroked Tom's hair, and said to him, Tom, I hope that one day you can take more steps on the road of love, not stay in the same place, but go further. Harry, who was beside him, listened to Dumbledore's words and fell into deep thought. In the Chamber of Secrets, Tom Riddle wanted to know how he, a powerless baby, defeated Voldemort. Now he thought. The reason is probably the love that Headmaster Dumbledore talked about. Love is the greatest magic in the world. Mother's love helped me resist Voldemort's spell. Dumbledore and Tom had just finished talking, while Ginny started crying while talking to her mother. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't do those things on purpose. I thought someone had left the diary there. Seeing Ginny choking and crying, Peter came over to comfort the little girl. Miss Weasley should go to the hospital for a while. This is a terrible experience for her. I don't think it's necessary to punish her. Those wizards who are older and smarter than her have been deceived by Voldemort, not to mention Ginny and Tom. Don't you think so? Professor Dumbledore. Dumbledore was stunned for a moment, then looked at Peter with mixed feelings. You said what I wanted to say, what else can I say? Mr. Padraic is right, Miss Weasley, go and rest first. Maybe eating a big cup of chocolate before going to bed will make you feel better. Dumbledore's sight slowly swept across everyone's eyes. In addition, I want to announce something, a very important thing. He smiled and said to everyone, Harry, Mark, Raven, Tom, Loki and Ron, you will all receive the special award for service to the school, and let me think about it. By the way, I think each of you can add 200 points to your own house. Hearing that he was also awarded 200 points, Ron's face immediately flushed with excitement. Peter was completely numb when he heard Dumbledore's bonus rule. Mark, Harry and Ron are Gryffindor house. The three of them add up to 600 points. Isn't it completely crushing the other three houses? This old guy's partiality for Gryffindor house is really unconcealed. Raven, who was next to him, curled her lips in dissatisfaction after hearing what Dumbledore said. Gryffindor suddenly gained 600 points. It's almost the end of the semester. Doesn't this mean that the house cup will be awarded to Gryffindor directly? Peter saw his daughter's dissatisfaction and walked over to touch her hair gently. Then he cast his eyes to the Gothic-style spire outside. Tonight is really a long day. The next day, at Padrick's farm, Clark was flipping through newspapers at the door. After putting down the Daily Planet, he picked up a copy of the Daily Prophet. The moving figures on the newspaper startled him. After seeing that he was holding a newspaper about the Hogwarts wizarding world, he breathed a sigh of relief. The Hogwarts Chamber of Secrets incident has been solved. The murderer was a dark wizard. The terrorist has been defeated by Gilderoy Lockhart. Clark looked at the contents of the newspaper in surprise. He had heard Raven talk about the Chamber of Secrets incident in their school, but he didn't expect it to be solved now. However, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart was unfortunately hit by the Oblivion Curse during the battle with the Dark Wizard, causing him to lose his memory. Now the professor himself is in St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, receiving treatment to restore his memory. Seeing this, Clark looked at Loki, who was going downstairs. Loki, has your defense against the dark arts teacher lost his memory? Loki coughed after hearing this. Feeling somewhat guilty, he straightened up and nodded. Yes, he was cast a forgetfulness spell by a dark wizard. Loki thought to himself that it was not my fault. In order to prevent this guy from shouting, I could only cast a forgetfulness spell to control him. Besides, this guy was not a good person. He even wanted to cast a forgetfulness spell on Mark. His ending could only be regarded as retribution for his evil deeds. What a pity, Clark said with some regret. I like his walking with vampires and breaking with female ghosts. I wanted to meet him before, forget about meeting him. I guess he's lying on the hospital bed now, confused by the letters from readers in the room, Loki said casually. He didn't have the heart to tell Clark the truth. Let the beautiful image of Professor Lockhart remain deeply in Clark's heart. Amen. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520, The Shame of Krypton was exposed. 1 month later. Padrick Farm. Kara and Rio were standing in the barn on the farm, loading the pile grain onto the pickup truck. The two super Kryptonians threw the crops onto the truck effortlessly. I've noticed that Tom is a little weird lately. Kara grabbed a bundle of crops and said to Ria next to her. Ria asked in confusion, what? This kid often makes a hissing sound, which sounds like a snake talking. I hate snakes the most. If I see a snake on the farm, I will definitely collapse, Kara said in a depressed mood. I know. I heard Tom say that it's called Parseltongue, and it can communicate with snakes. Ria didn't find it strange. Although Tom is sometimes not as mature as a child, he is a child who listens to his father very much. Kara stretched her body and complained, you are wrong. This kid only listens to his father. He and Robin don't get along well. Last time when you were a guest at the Kent family, did you forget the weird atmosphere between them? Everyone wants to prove themselves. Every child in Peter's family has shown unique abilities. To be honest, I don't think it's strange if his next child is a Martian, Ria replied. I think Martian Manhunter should have no offspring and be Peter's son. Who knows? After all, the magic world is here. After complaining, Kara looked towards the living room. Peter was not at home. Azu and Star-Lord went to Smallville School, and Raven and the other 4 went to Hogwarts. Only Persephone was preparing lunch in the living room. That? Rhea, let me teach you thermal vision. Kara said she would help Rhea develop thermal vision. Rhea, who has been on Earth for more than half a year, has not yet developed her own thermal vision ability. Kara feels that her compatriot is a little slow. Is it here? Rhea put down the crops in her hand and asked her in confusion. It's here. Kara showed her how to do it, and the thermal vision in her eyes shot out, sizzled, and pierced through the wall of the barn, leaving 2 small holes. Just like this, squint your eyes, and then concentrate your attention. Seeing Kara's confident look, Rhea came over and closed her eyes as she said. After a while, she opened her eyes and tried to focus all her attention on her eyes. After trying several times, it still didn't work. Rhea shook her head in frustration and said, "No, even if I concentrate, I can't release the thermal vision." Then think of something that makes you blush. Kara gave Rhea a bad idea. Rhea was stunned. What kind of tiger wolf words are these? Do you know how Clark's thermal vision awakened? Kara said mysteriously. I don't know. Well, let me tell you. In the first year of high school, Clark's class had a biology teacher. I don't remember her name, probably Akins. She was a super hot girl, so Clark fell for her. When the biology teacher played a popular science movie, it was probably a movie about animals mating in spring, and he set the movie screen on fire. That was the first time he awakened his thermal vision. This is what Azu told me. I don't make any guarantees about the authenticity of the incident, Rhea. She didn't expect Clark to have such a past. So, you can try to imagine that there is a handsome guy standing in front of you, or a guy you like, so that you can release thermal vision. Rhea frowned. It sounds like a bad idea, but you can give it a try. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, and in her mind, as Kara said, she imagined a guy she felt good about, and looked at the wall of the barn. The next second, she opened her eyes suddenly. The red light accumulated in her eyes and shot towards the wooden wall of the barn. Zula, the heat vision accumulated a powerful force, rushed out with a bang, directly penetrated the wall and shot on the ground. Good. Rhea, you did it. Hold on, that's it, let your willpower focus. Seeing Rhea shooting out a heat vision, Kara shouted excitedly. What? Because of a little excitement, Rhea didn't hear Kara's words clearly, and turned her head directly. Zula, the heat vision shot out from her eyes shot directly at Kara. Kara, who was unable to react in time, was directly hit in the lower abdomen by Rhea's heat vision. The heat vision broke through her defense, and blood spurted out immediately. Kara, who felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, fell to the ground with a thump. Rhea was shocked and her mind was immediately in chaos. The heat vision in her eyes also dissipated instantly. Kara, oh, God. Sorry. I'm really sorry. Rhea quickly squatted down and looked at Kara, who was kneeling on the ground with her hands on her lower abdomen. She was in a panic, her eyes full of panic. Sorry, Kara, I didn't mean it. Kara covered her lower abdomen, blood slowly seeped out of her abdomen, sweat oozed from her forehead. She lowered her head and said with difficulty, It hurts. It really hurts, not the kind of pain that needs treatment. Oh, God. When Rhea didn't know what to do, she suddenly saw Zu returning to the farm. She immediately shouted to Zu, John. Here. Kara is in danger. After hearing the voice, Zu instantly moved to Rhea's side, and saw Kara kneeling on the ground with her lower abdomen covered, and his eyes widened in shock. What happened? Did the aliens invade again? Kent Farm. After Peter checked Jonathan's body for him, he stood up and said to him, In general, your heart problem is not big, Jonathan. Just take good care of yourself. Jonathan has been feeling uncomfortable with his heart recently, sometimes palpitations, accelerated heartbeat, and even chest pain, so he went to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor thought that he might be too tired recently, causing arrhythmia. Thank you, Peter. I've always said there's nothing wrong. Martha has always asked you to come and take a look, Jonathan thanked Peter. Because I trust Peter more, and you, Jonathan, you've always been stubborn. Martha glared at her husband. Peter's perspective line looked at Jonathan's heart, and his brows slightly frowned. Although he said it was okay, and Jonathan didn't seem to have any problems now, but as far as he knew, in the original world line, Jonathan died of a heart attack. After he traveled to this world, would the inertia of the world still develop in this way? No, Fate had already been changed by himself and was very different from the original world line. Besides, he now had a lot of secret techniques, and curing Jonathan's heart disease was not a difficult problem. Maybe the hospital and Smallwood didn't do a comprehensive examination. Peter hesitated for a moment and said to the couple, "I'll call Bruce and tell him." Bruce knows a lot of well-known doctors in the United States, and the medical company sponsored by the Wayne Group should be better than Smallwood. Hearing Peter's words, Jonathan was stunned for a moment. "You mean, Peter, I go to Gotham, for your health? I think this is the best choice." "No, Peter, thank you for your help. There shouldn't be any major problems with my body." Jonathan rejected Peter's proposal. "You don't know much about your own body, Jonathan, but about this matter, I hope you won't be stubborn." Peter frowned and said to him. Martha also looked at her husband with a worried look. "Jonathan, I think you should listen to Peter's advice." Jonathan patted his wife's hand gently and looked at Peter. "I know my situation, Peter, as long as I take a rest, and the farm can't do without me now." Peter looked at the stubborn Jonathan and was considering whether to force him to go to Gotham, when he suddenly heard a sound from outside. With a creak, the door was pushed open. Azu hurriedly pushed the door open, greeted Jonathan and his wife, and said to Peter, "Dad, something happened." Accompanied by Azu, Peter returned to the farm and saw Carol lying on the sofa, covering her bleeding abdomen with a pale face. Next to her were Rhea and Hades, who were anxious. Rhea wanted to send Kara to the hospital, but when she thought of the skin of Kryptonians, the medical technology on Earth could not even cut it, so she had to wait for Peter to return it home. When she saw Peter appear, she immediately came up to him. "Sir." Peter comforted the other party and went forward to check on Kara's condition. After asking Azu to go upstairs to avoid him, Peter tore open the clothes in front of Kara's lower abdomen, looked at the shocking wound on it, and frowned. On the way, he had heard Azu tell the cause of the incident. He felt funny and speechless in his heart, and didn't know how to complain about this silly girl. Sure enough, there was no wrong nickname. As the Kryptonian shame, Kara was not beaten by the villains this time, but was broken by her own people. If she was shot to death by Rhea, Kara would probably be awarded the title of the weakest supergirl in the parallel universe. Reaching out and pressing on Kara's fair skin, the rune of healing flashed, and a cool feeling surrounded her wound. Kara, with a slightly red face, looked at Peter's eyes embarrassedly. Peter's healing rune can stop bleeding and relieve pain. Fortunately, Rhea's heat vision did not penetrate her lower abdomen, but only cut the skin and blood vessels. Next time when you teach Rhea Kryptonian skills, there must be a third person present, understand? Kara, Peter said to her while healing her. "This is just an accident," Kara still said a little stubbornly. "I have succeeded, but we were a little excited at the time." In order to divert the strange feeling in her abdomen, she coughed and asked Peter, "Peter, what is the use of the watch on your wrist?" She saw that the pointer of the watch in Peter's hand had pointed to 3/4, so she asked curiously. Chapter 521 Clark's Lost Father's Dream. "I think you never take off this strange watch." Kara looked at the watch on Peter's wrist curiously. "Does your wound not hurt?" Peter looked at her fair belly and asked her with a frown. Hiss. As soon as Peter mentioned it, Kara immediately felt a pain in her lower abdomen. The burning and stinging sensation came in waves, making her frown. "You are not suitable to be a teacher, Kara." After Peter used the rune to heal the other's wound, he stood up and said to her, "Next time, let Persephone accompany you, so that you will not hurt yourself because of your reckless and brainless behavior." Kara, who felt much better, said unconvincedly, "Peter, this is just like you falling down when walking. It is an unavoidable tragedy." Then she cast her eyes on Peter's wrist. "You haven't told me yet, what is the use of your watch?" "I don't think it's an ordinary chronograph watch." Kara was going to get to the bottom of Peter's watch issue. Peter did not answer directly. He lowered his head to look at the watch. The hands of the watch have traveled about 3/4 of the distance. According to the previous running frequency, it will reach the end in about a month. Compared with the time interval between Mark and Tom, the interval between the arrivals this time is shorter. Stroking his beard and looking at the watch, Peter fell into deep thought. "I don't know what type of baby will be born this time." Originally, he thought that the world limited by the system was framed in the American comic world, but now it seems that it is not limited to this kind of world. If different types of fictional worlds are unfolded, then the range of choices for father-worried people will be extremely wide. And there are many father-worried people in this fictional world who are more difficult to deal with than Tom. What if he gets a father-worried person like Itachi in the Naruto world, or Mordred in the Fate world who specializes in stabbing his father? Wouldn't he have to worry about his life at any time? In addition, Peter sighed slightly. The Weasley family in the Hogwarts world has always been famous for having many children, but even if they have many children, they only have 7. I just hope that after the system plugin sent me the 7th father worry, it will calm down for a while. Now that 6 children are living on the farm, he can no longer control the situation. If a few more children are born at the current frequency, he can already imagine his miserable life in the future. What's wrong? Did I ask you a question that is difficult to answer, Peter? Seeing that Peter kept frowning and didn't speak, Kara asked in confusion. No, I just thought of something else. Peter shook his head, stared at the watch on his wrist, and said to her, actually, I am not from Earth. What? Kara was shocked by Peter's serious expression and words. You are not from Earth? Yes, I am a Trisolaran living in Alpha Centauri. We live on a planet surrounded by 3 stars, so it is called Trisolaran. The environment of Trisolaran planet is extremely harsh, with irregular gravitational fields and constantly changing climates, which makes the physiological structure and adaptability of Trisolarans very different from humans. Kara was stunned by Peter's casual nonsense. Really? Peter, yes, our social system is highly centralized, and all individual values are based on whether they can contribute to the whole. The law only has 2 judgments: innocent or guilty. Guilty means execution. Our lifespan depends on how long we can serve the whole. If we can't continue to serve, our life will end. That's why my appearance doesn't change much, and the reason why I look at this watch frequently is that when the hour hand reaches the end, I will return to my planet. Kara, are you willing to go back with me then? Facing Peter's sudden serious question, Kara's brain fell into a sluggish state. After a long while, she hesitated and said uneasily, I need to think about it carefully. Is this an alternative emotional confession? But she is Clark's cousin, and Peter is Clark's godfather. Isn't this a mess of generations? Also, why does this Trisolarian sound so unreliable? Okay, I'm just joking with you. Your wound hasn't healed completely yet. It's best not to move around. Just lie down and rest for a few days. While Kara was hesitating, Peter stood up and said that he was just joking. Hearing Peter say that it was a joke, Kara was stunned for a moment. Then, regardless of her own injuries, Supergirl jumped up and pounced on Peter like an angry lioness. Bang! Kara's body was hugged from the air by Peter and suppressed forcefully. But because of her reckless behavior, the wound split again, so she could only lie on the bed with tears in her eyes and accept the care of Persephone and Rhea. At night, after Peter's family finished dinner, Raven and Tom went back to their rooms early to study. With the arrival of the final exam, the 2 of them are now studying late at night for their grades. As for Mark and Loki, Mark's grades have always been very stable, and Loki didn't take the exam too seriously, so the 2 stayed in the living room to watch TV. Godfather, can we talk? Peter was about to ask Rhea to bring the food to the injured Kara's room when he heard Clark's voice. Turning around, he saw Clark with a worried look on his face. Of course, Peter got up, took a piece of clothing, and asked Clark to go with him to the secret base in the barn to talk. The cold moonlight sprinkled down, and the cold ground seemed to be covered with a layer of silver frost, adding more chill to the cold winter night. With a creaking sound, Peter and Clark stepped on the stairs of the barn and went up to the 2nd floor. In the barn, the cold wind whistled through the walls that Kara's hot eyes could see through, and rolled in. Going up to the 2nd floor of the barn, Peter turned to Clark, who looked worried, and asked, What's wrong? Did something bother you in high school? No, Godfather. Clark clenched his fists, with a tangled expression on his face. After a while, he asked Peter, Godfather, is my father's heart disease problem serious? Peter was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, No, don't worry, Clark, your father doesn't have a heart disease, he just has some arrhythmia. The doctor thinks there will be no problem as long as he pays attention to rest. How do you know about your father's heart problem, Clark? Peter asked him. When I returned to the farm from school in the afternoon, I heard the conversation between my father and mother, Clark said sadly. I know I shouldn't eavesdrop on their conversation, but I'm sorry, Godfather, I've been afraid of losing them, you, and everyone. Peter came over and comforted him. Don't worry, Clark, that kind of thing won't happen. What you're afraid of will never happen, but, Clark raised his eyes. With a hint of fear and confusion in his eyes, Godfather, I once had a dream. Dream? What dream? I dreamed that on a quiet afternoon, my father was working in the barn. It should have been a very ordinary day, the sun was shining, and my father walked into the barn, and he just fell to the ground like that. Then, when we found him, he had stopped breathing. When Peter heard Clark's story, his mood suddenly became heavy. The doctor said that Dad died of a heart attack. They couldn't save him. It was too late. Clark's voice became lower and lower. After that, there was a funeral for my father. I know it was a dream, but the dream was too real. There were snowflakes floating in the sky and the ground was stained with a layer of white. In the church, everyone wore black clothes with white flowers on their chests. My mother was crying. Clark's eyes turned red when he said this. I know it was just a dream, but I was really scared to hear that Dad had a heart problem. Godfather, you don't look old. When I face you, I may not have that feeling of loss, but when I face my parents and see their increasingly old faces, my heart will be seized by fear in an instant. Peter listened to Clark's words and was silent for a moment. He stretched out his hand and put it on the other's shoulder, comforting him. Don't be afraid and anxious, Clark. When we grow up and our parents get older, we will worry that they will leave us, but we should not be overly afraid. Life is short. If we lose precious time for the fear of today because of the unknown tomorrow, it is not worth it, don't you think? Your dream, that may just be a reflection of your inner consciousness. Clark, I am now in charge of human dreams. I know what different dreams represent. That is the thoughts of the heart, our secret true feelings. Clark got some warmth from Peter's hands. He frowned and said, but, Godfather, that dream is extremely clear, as if it really happened. Yeah, Peter's eyes were cast on the dark field outside. Maybe it really happened in a corner of the world, but not our world, just like the unjust world we experienced, in a distant parallel world. One afternoon, maybe such a tragedy happened, but here. Godfather promised you that it would not happen. Peter looked at Clark with burning eyes. I will not let Jonathan die because of the disease. I have contacted Bruce. Tomorrow we can take Jonathan to Gotham for the best treatment. Peter had just finished speaking when his cell phone rang. He picked up the phone and found that it was Bruce calling. Bruce, sir, some accidents have occurred. Can you come to Gotham? Chapter 522 Batman discovers his father's murderer. After hanging up Bruce's phone, Peter took Azu and Clark and rushed to Gotham. 2 hours ago. Gotham. The rooftop of the office building. Bruce was talking to Gordon. Standing on the rooftop blown by the cold wind, Gordon wrapped his windbreaker tightly. Bruce Wayne, as Batman, stood behind him at this time. He held a photo of a girl in his hand and asked, Olivia, right, this girl's name. Gordon turned around and handed him the information in his hand. I can help you with this, but the situation is not optimistic. The two were discussing a kidnapping case. The kidnapped girl was the girl in the photo in Bruce's hand. Gordon watched Batman open the envelope of the information and said to him, the surveillance of the hospital this morning showed that the girl's uncle had been to the hospital, but that was not her uncle. I recognized the guy's true face. Ray Quimby was wanted for helping a prisoner I arrested 10 years ago. We need to find him, otherwise I don't know what will happen to this kidnapped girl. Looking at the girl in the photo, Bruce frowned. For some reason, he suddenly felt uneasy when he heard the name Ray Quimby. Do you have any clues about Ray Quimby? Gordon's expression became serious and he said to Bruce, yes, he should be somewhere in the industrial park. He took out his cigarette and was about to take 2 puffs when his men's voice suddenly came from the intercom. Sheriff, I found a suspect suspected of Ray Quimby. He just brought his child into the export warehouse on Old Taylor Street. I know. Call for support. I'll go there right away. Do you hear me? Police car number 241. After talking to the intercom, Gordon turned around and spoke to Batman. As a result, he found that Batman, who had been standing behind him, had disappeared. He looked towards the dark night in the distance, trying to catch the figure of Batman, but in the end he found nothing. With a bang, Batman spread his bat wings and jumped to the ground. Batman drove the Batmobile and rushed towards Old Taylor Street. While monitoring the police communication channel, he rushed towards the industrial park at the fastest speed. I hope she's still alive, Bruce whispered as he drove the Batmobile. Soon he drove the Batmobile to Old Taylor Street in the industrial park. After speeding around the street, he found the 241 police car parked at the entrance of an alley. The door of the police car was open, and the police car was flashing dazzling red lights, but he didn't see the figure of the police officer. A smell of death that was extremely familiar to him entered his nose. On the other side, Gordon also arrived at the scene quickly. Gordon, who was driving the police car, asked the dispatch desk, "Dispatch center, this is the detective. Isn't number 241 waiting for support at the exit of Taylor Street?" He patrolled the exit and didn't find the location of the number 241 police car. Zizzy, the dispatch center came out with a word that shocked Gordon. "Detective, Officer Bradley of the number 241 police car is not on duty today." "What?" Gordon, who was shocked, immediately said to the dispatch center, "Send support to Taylor Street immediately. Do you understand?" Received. After hanging up the radio, Gordon sped up and drove forward. It was obvious that the other party had set a trap to deal with Batman. "I just hope that Batman will not fall into the trap." At the entrance of an alley, Gordon found the 241 police car. After getting off the car, he came to the police car, which was covered with a black cloth stained with blood. With a frown, he took a deep breath and lifted the black cloth. Crash! At the same time, on the top floor of the Taylor Street warehouse, Batman, who was following the trace of the stench, unexpectedly found a body. Squatting down, Batman checked the body with a cutthroat. He quickly confirmed that the other party was the Quimby he was looking for. He stretched out his finger and gently touched the blood to confirm that the blood had not yet coagulated, and the other party should not have died for long. Staring at Quimby's body, Bruce frowned more and more. "Why do I always feel that this guy looks familiar to me?" After a while, Bruce, under the Dark Knight mask, uttered a low voice, "I am sure that the stench of corpses that overwhelms this place is not from Quimby. I hear more of the smell of death and decay." While searching different rooms in the warehouse, he shouted to the surroundings, "Olivia, are you there?" Bruce, who was searching for Olivia's trace, was thinking about what had just happened. Just now, he lifted the black cloth and saw the body of the police officer. It was the body of the police officer who had been dead for more than 12 hours. It was obvious that someone had just pretended to be a police officer and called Gordon. This was not against Gordon, but against his own conspiracy. With a bang, a figure suddenly appeared in the darkness and attacked him. The agile and silent black shadow appeared behind Bruce and hit him in the waist with an elbow. Bruce, who was unable to react in time, was knocked back by the elbow. He groaned and immediately responded, hitting the opponent with his backhand. The cloak whistled past. Bruce turned around and swung his fist, hitting the opponent's arm with a punch, knocking the opponent back. With a bang, the shadow hit the wall, making a dull sound. After repelling the opponent, Bruce saw the opponent's appearance in the thin moonlight. The opponent was as scary as a stitched mummy. It looked like he was wearing meat on his face, and his skin was wrinkled and stitched together. Bruce frowned and asked the other party, "Who are you? Where is Olivia?" As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sound of wind behind him. Bruce immediately dodged and retreated. While retreating, he was surprised to see the second guy with stitched skin appear. "Who are you?" Bruce asked the other party vigilantly. The first guy, who was knocked away by Bruce, stood up and said to him, "The infamous Batman. Gotham City's Caped Crusader is really an extraordinary collection. We are all puppeteers men. The purpose is to capture you and make you our collection, Puppet Master." Hearing this name, Bruce frowned. He had heard the name of this guy. He had learned from Gordon that there was such a villain in Gotham City. According to Gordon, the puppeteer's original name was Barton. The other party's father was a pervert, and the puppeteer had watched his father capture innocent people and dismember and reassemble them since he was a child. Gordon, who was not yet the chief at the time and was just a young police officer, shot and killed Barton's father. Barton disappeared for several years after his father's death. When he reappeared, he called himself a puppeteer, and part of the skin on his face came from his deceased father. There are even horror legends about him in the Gotham City gangs, such as the puppeteer dismembering humans and then combining them into a monster, and using medical skills to transform humans. Bang! The guy wielding a sledgehammer attacked Bruce. Bruce waved his cape, jumped into the air, and threw a bat dart to stab the other party. Facing the attack from behind, he backhanded a hook and hit the other party's shoulder. Bang! Bruce knocked the other party back and was about to continue attacking, but he didn't expect the other party to suddenly grin and throw a bomb at him. With a bang sound, Bruce was blasted out of the room. Bruce, who was shaken out of the room, endured the pain and shot out the hook gun and the flying building materials. Whoop! The rope shot out by the hook gun came at a speed as sharp as the wind and entangled the pillar of the wall. The black hook gun thread with a metallic luster entangled the pillar and pulled him into the building. Bruce returned to the warehouse and attacked the two men of the puppet master directly. The two men who didn't expect Bruce to be able to return were caught off guard and received 2 punches and fell heavily to the ground. After getting rid of the 2 men, Bruce checked the wounds, bent down and grabbed one of the guys and asked, "Where's Olivia?" The groaning man with a terrifying appearance spit out the location of Olivia, who was kidnapped by them, to Bruce. "Why did you kidnap her?" Bruce hit the other's head hard to the ground and asked harshly. "Yes, it's the puppeteer. Olivia's uncle runs a trucking company. The puppeteer wants to kidnap Olivia and make him agree to sell his company. He knows that you are also investigating this matter, so let us kill you here." Hearing the other party's words, Bruce frowned even more. After knocking the other party unconscious with a punch, he called Gordon to deal with it. 10 minutes later, according to the location provided by the puppeteer's men, Bruce found the kidnapped Olivia in an abandoned building. Fortunately, the other party was still alive. Although the matter has been resolved, Bruce, who is a little uneasy in his heart, used Gordon to get the home address of Olivia's uncle. Half an hour later, he pushed open the door and entered an apartment. The apartment was dark, with only the cold wind blowing in from the window. The room was decorated very warmly. Bruce walked to the wall of the living room and took a look at the photo wall on the wall. It was just a casual glance, but he was struck by lightning. Bruce looked at an old photo on the wall with astonishment and disbelief. It was a photo of a young white man facing the camera. There was nothing special about the photo, but the face was a face he could never forget. The face of the murderer who killed his parents. Suddenly, he was back in Crime Alley that night. That night, he went to the Park Street Theater near Crime Alley with his parents to watch a movie. Later, his parents were shot and killed by a robber in the alley. He was a young boy, and he witnessed it all. Highs and lows, falling and rising, heaven and hell were visualized in front of him. Countless things were falling autumn leaves, snowflakes, shell casings, his parents' cries, sparks, pearls. He lost the most precious thing that night. It can never be made up, and he will not forget it until his soul rests in peace. Chapter 523 Bruce's Life Choices, If Time Could Be Reversed. On countless nights, I dreamed of the place where I witnessed a tragedy that night. The scene in front of me suddenly became that unforgettable night. The theater's movie list has not changed, and the chalk lines on the ground outline the epitome of the earlier tragedy. Everything is familiar and strange, and the distant details continue to erode Bruce's thoughts. The rage of revenge burned in his heart. Going deep into the dirtiest corners of the city, transforming into Batman at night, everything he did was to release his anger, and now he finally found the culprit of everything. Taking a deep breath, Bruce clenched his fists. Squeak! A few minutes later, the door made a sound of a key turning, and someone came in from outside. Bruce hid himself. Under his gaze, a figure slowly walked over. The moment the other party turned on the light, Bruce recognized the other party. Although this guy's appearance has changed a lot, for Bruce, who has had countless nightmares about this and returned to the scene countless times, no matter how this guy changes, he will not recognize him wrong. After a busy day, Josier was about to lie on the sofa to rest. The figure of Batman slowly appeared behind him. Joe Chill, who had already noticed something, calmly reached out to open the drawer next to his sofa. The revolver is no longer there, Joe Chill. Bruce's hoarse voice came out slowly. In the calm and hoarse voice, there was his suppressed anger. Hearing Bruce's words, Joe Chill was stunned. Bruce slowly walked towards him. Also, the shotgun behind the fireplace belongs to me, and the .45 pistol in your bedroom, although it will eventually be against your forehead, I'm just looking for pills. I have a cold, Joe Chill said as he reached out to grab a dagger under the sofa, turned around and stabbed at Batman fiercely. Bang! Bruce grabbed his wrist, gritted his teeth, and took the opponent's dagger with his backhand, and twisted his wrist with a click. Joe Chill, whose wrist was twisted, screamed in pain. He punched Joe Chill in the face again, and Bruce knocked him to the ground. Bruce stepped heavily on Josier's chest with his right foot. His heart was instantly filled with anger. Tell me. Why did you shoot the Wayne couple in that alley? Why did you do that? Tell me. What is the purpose of a person as mediocre and cruel as you? Tell me. Bruce's eyes were red, and he stepped hard on the other's chest with his right foot. Josier, who was groaning from being stepped on, squeezed out a sentence from his mouth with all his strength and fear. I didn't mean it at that time. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make some money. You killed a couple and also killed a boy that night. Bruce bent down, grabbed the other person, and knocked his head against the wall. With a bang, Josier's head was hit and blood splattered. Just for some money, lifting his knee, Bruce hammered the other person and covered his chest in pain. You took away 2 lives just for this excuse. Bruce grabbed the man's collar and knocked his head against the wall again. Listen, outside this city, there are children crying in the alleys, women lying dead on the streets late at night, freaks who enjoy killing, thugs who paralyze themselves with poison, doctors who intimidate others. You, a bunch of dirty bugs, are using such a ridiculous reason to colorize this city. Josiel, whose head was hit and blood was splattered, felt as if his body did not belong to him. He wanted to stand up, but Batman's fist hit him in the heart. Bang! He felt as if the air in his lungs was sucked out all of a sudden. He wanted to bend down to breathe, but he couldn't, so he had to cough violently. It was like there was an animal hiding in his chest that could get out at any time, and he was trying every way to expel it. Huff. Huff. Josiel, who was panting heavily, was grabbed by Bruce's head and pressed against the fireplace railing in the room, squeezing hard into the gap in the railing. Remember this fear that goes deep into your bones. I want you to remember this despair, panic and pain forever. Bruce gritted his teeth and said to him. Josiel, who had little strength left after being beaten, cried out for mercy. I remember, please, spare me, I am willing to go to jail. Please, no. Don't even think about it. Gritting his teeth, Bruce, with a hideous and twisted face, picked up the dagger on the ground and was about to stab Josiel's throat. When the dagger was infinitely close to the opponent's neck, Bruce suddenly stopped. In his mind, Peter's figure flashed in front of him. The anger he had been maintaining suddenly subsided. Bruce stared blankly at the dagger in his hand. After a while, he stood up weakly and threw the dagger in his hand to the ground. Do I really want to kill him? A feeling of powerlessness and frustration surged into Bruce's heart. It was as if he had returned to the Batcave when he was young. He fell into darkness because of fear, anger, and powerlessness. Killing him would melt the darkness in his heart and the darkness of the city? Becoming Batman and using anger and violence to solve criminals, he once believed that this would be his salvation, but this did not really bring him peace. The war between the Caped Crusader and the evil of Gotham eventually plunged him into deeper frustration and powerlessness. He thought he could regain a sense of power through violence and inflicting fear, and do the right thing to change Gotham. He thought that with anger, he could burn away all the evil in Gotham. But this was not enough. Killing Joe Chill could not eradicate the darkness in his heart. Walking to the window, Bruce held the railing to calm himself down. After staying motionless for a long time, he turned on the communication device on his arm and connected Peter's phone. Sir, something unexpected has happened. Can you come to Gotham? When Peter, Azu and Clark arrived, they saw Josiel, who was tied to the fireplace and dying, and Bruce sitting next to him. It seems that a fierce battle has taken place here. Peter glanced at Josiel and walked towards Bruce. When Bruce saw Peter coming, he took a deep breath and stood up. Sir, who is he? Peter looked at Josiel, who was lying on the ground and collapsed into a ball, and asked Bruce. Josiel. Bruce said the other person's name. Peter was a little surprised when he heard the name. He remembered that this guy was the murderer who killed the Wayne couple. Looking at Josiel, Peter said to Azu, John, go and knock this guy out. Azu nodded, walked over and gave him a physical sleep therapy. So, Bruce, what happened? Bruce told Peter everything that happened today with a complicated expression, and that Josiel was the murderer who killed his parents before. I wanted to kill him so much. I saw him shoot my parents. I saw with my own eyes the filth behind the prosperity of this city. In front of my parents' tombstone, I made a promise to use my life to fight the evil in this world and to bring justice to my parents and all those who have been treated unfairly. Now, he stands in front of me, but I hesitated. Sir, Bruce looked at his bloody hands. Sir, what do you think? What should I do now? Seeing the confused expression on Bruce's face, Peter sighed slightly. That doesn't depend on me, Bruce. It depends entirely on you. You know the path you are sticking to. Whether it's locking him up to be punished, or killing him yourself, or I helping you do it, you only need a thought to decide. But you finally asked me for help. You actually knew what you were thinking, but you were also afraid. You tried to let me help you make a decision. Bruce was stunned for a moment after hearing Peter's thoughts, and looked at Josier. Yes, sir, I don't want to kill him, such a bug. I want him to spend his whole life in fear and pain, but I'm afraid, if one day, it's me who dies in that alley, will my parents avenge me at all costs? I'm afraid they will blame me. Maybe they will do that, But, Bruce, I think your parents' expectations of you should be that they never want you to work so hard. What they want is for you to be an ordinary person, not Batman." Patting Bruce's shoulder gently, Peter asked Azu to carry Joe to the police station. Let's go back to Wayne Manor first." Bruce nodded with mixed feelings and followed Peter out of the apartment. The next day, Peter, who had rested in Wayne Manor for a night, did not see Bruce when he got up in the morning. After thinking for a while, he walked to the grave of the Wayne couple and saw Bruce standing in front of the tombstone. Seeing Peter coming, Bruce raised his head and said, "I always wonder, sir, what would it be like if I could go back to that alley and stop that bullet?" "We can't go back to the past, Bruce. Yes, everything seems to be just a dream, but the grief will never be forgotten." Bruce sorted out his mood and said to Peter, "I plan to send someone to pick up Mr. Kent in the morning. I have invited the best heart doctor in the United States." Bruce took the initiative to talk about Jonathan's heart treatment. After the two talked for a while, they returned to the manor. Peter just sat down when his cell phone rang. Rhea told him that a man named Barry Allen came to the farm and wanted to see him. Peter asked Rhea to tell him to run to Gotham to see him. 2 minutes later, Peter saw the Flash running fast. After Barry greeted Bruce, he asked him right away, "Mr. Padrick, have you ever heard of reversing time?" Chapter 524, The Flash and the Flashpoint Crisis. "What did you say, Barry?" Peter looked at Barry suspiciously. "During the Battle of Metropolis, I talked to Clark, and later we exchanged emails." Barry Allen mentioned Clark. He said in the email, "Sir, you once traveled through time and brought Clark back to the future. I want to ask you, can we really go back to the past and the future? I mean, change the past?" Barry looked at Peter expectantly and uneasy. Peter did not answer. He looked at Bruce. Bruce had just caught the murderer who killed his parents, and his mood was in a state of confusion. After hearing Barry's words, he was slightly stunned. Alfred, who was next to him, looked at the whimsical Barry with a slightly stunned expression. He didn't know Barry, and after a moment of hesitation he asked Peter, "Mr. Padrick, who is this?" "Barry Allen." Peter introduced him to Alfred. "He is a forensic technician in the police station. When he was a child, his mother died in a bizarre terrorist accident, and his father was mistakenly believed to be the murderer. When he grew up, he actively investigated the truth of his mother's death and cleared his father's name in his spare time. Later, when he participated in the exhibition of the particle accelerator developed by Harrison Wells Laboratory, the explosion of the accelerator released dark matter lightning that hid him, causing him to be in a coma for 9 months. After waking up, he gained lightning speed." Peter briefly told Barry's information. Then he turned his eyes to Barry. Did this kid find that he could travel through time and space? This guy wanted to go back to the past to change something, which might really cause some serious consequences. He didn't know much about the story of the Flash in his previous world. He only knew that this kid had always been obsessed with the day his mother died. Later, it seemed to cause a lot of confusion. It is said that on the day his mother was killed, there were more than 5 Flashes at the scene. Different Flashes, some began to prevent murders, and some prevented the past from being changed. Barry's mother, is this a check-in point for speedsters? No, Barry, you can't change time. Peter pulled his thoughts back, looked at him seriously, and warned him, time is a complex and fragile concept. Events in the past, present and future are interrelated. Any intervention may have unpredictable effects on the entire timeline. Humans must respect the laws of time and history and travel through time with caution. I know time is important to each of us, Mr. Padrick. Barry's eyes were a little evasive. I just want to get some opinions about time from you, Barry. Time is the most dangerous thing. Bruce came over and said to him, when a person tries to fix himself or solve a problem by changing past events, it often leads to more complex and unexpected results. I know, sorry. Barry exhaled in frustration and sat on the sofa. Sometimes I can't help but think too much, thinking that if someone had saved my mother on the day she was killed. He cast his eyes on Bruce. Just like the day your parents were killed, Bruce, something happened that prevented them from being killed, and maybe you wouldn't have become Batman. Wait, before Barry finished speaking, Bruce looked at him suspiciously. Do you know my identity? Do you know I'm Batman? Barry immediately realized that he had let the cat out of the bag. He coughed awkwardly. Sorry. I didn't mean to say it. You can just pretend that I didn't say that. How did you know I'm Batman? Bruce continued to ask him. Being stared at by Bruce's oppressive gaze, Barry originally wanted to get away, but soon he felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by the other party. It was Clark. Clark told me in the email, we became good pen pals, but don't worry, Bruce, I will never tell anyone. Barry told Bruce that he would definitely keep his mouth shut. Bruce, he looked at Peter with a complicated look, and Bruce remained silent. Peter felt a little embarrassed by Bruce's sad look. Ahem. I will talk to Clark and ask him to change this question. As he was talking, Clark and Zoo came down from upstairs. Seeing that everyone was looking at him strangely, Clark was a little confused. Good morning. Clark soon found Barry sitting on the sofa. Barry, why are you here? Something. I want to talk to Mr. Patrick. Barry felt a little guilty about betraying Clark. Are you the Flash? Zoo looked at the Flash in his new uniform and asked in surprise. The last time Barry went to Metropolis to save the day, he wore a uniform modified from a homemade baseball uniform, like a moron. Now Barry's uniform is a red one-piece tights with two folded yellow lightning patterns on the chest, and yellow lightning patterns on the elbows and waist, which is more than a little color than before. Barry replied, yes, I'm the Flash, I upgraded my uniform. Zoo imitated Peter, stroking his chin and said, well, you looked like a freak before, but now you look like a superhero. Barry, you still dare to say that to me, aren't you a freak yourself? Normally, who calls their countrymen and drapes the national flag behind them? Barry, who was complaining in his heart, pretended to be indifferent and looked at Peter. In short, Barry, don't try to change the world line, otherwise it will cause disasters that you can't handle, Peter finally warned Barry. Barry listened to Peter's words and nodded hesitantly. Next to him, Bruce, who had been quietly listening to Peter and Barry talking, cast his eyes on the cloudy sky outside the manor. If his parents hadn't been shot in that alley, what would he be like now? Bruce fell into deep thought. After leaving Wayne Manor, Barry rushed to his home in Midtown. He pushed open the door and sat down on the sofa. The joy he felt at first when he discovered that he could travel through time was gone. Time. What is time? After taking a few deep breaths and standing up, Barry walked to the window and picked up the photo frame on the table. In the photo frame was a photo of himself and his mother. His mother, smiling like a flower, squatted down and stood behind him, hugging him. He was a little shy hiding in his mother's arms. Everything seemed full of beauty. If it continued like this, it seemed that he would have a childhood without any flaws. Until a gunshot broke this beauty, everything began to take a sharp turn for the worse, and fate played a big joke on him. Mom, are you okay? Barry gently stroked the photo frame with his hand, took a deep breath, and then he looked up at the scenery outside. If possible, he would rather not become the Flash, as long as his mother was alive. His thoughts returned to that sunny day. When he opened the door as a young child, he saw his mother lying in a pool of blood. Everything was so unexpected and sudden. If he could go back to that day, perhaps he could prevent this tragedy. But soon he shook his head. No, I can't do this. Mr. Padraic is right. If I change the past, it will lead to unpredictable consequences. Although he said this to himself in his heart, he couldn't help but make associations. If that really happened, what would the future be like? At the same time, Wayne Manor. Bruce decided to go back to Smallville with Peter. He needed to explain to Jonathan Kent in person about his visit to Gotham. In addition, he also missed the life on the farm. Is this an Aston Martin? In the parking lot, Azu looked at Bruce's cool-looking sports car and asked him in surprise. Yes, Aston Martin Valor, a global limited edition, equipped with a previous generation V12 Vantage engine, a 5.2-liter turbocharged V12 Heart, which can burst out 705 horsepower and 555 pound-feet of torque. Bruce casually said to Azu, if you like, I can give it to you. Really? Azu's face was immediately filled with a professional fake smile. Bruce, although we had some misunderstandings before, that's all in the past. We are adults now, so we can meet and laugh it off. Bruce, I always regard you as my friend. You are my real friend. You can't drive this kind of car now. Peter and Clark walked in from outside. After hearing that Bruce was going to give Zoo a sports car, he said to Zoo, who was stunned, you are not yet an adult, John. Zoo hurriedly explained, Dad, I will be 18 soon. A few months later, Peter said to Zoo, who was disappointed, you are not suitable to drive this kind of sports car now. When you are 18, I will give you a car. Hearing that Peter was giving him a car, Zoo's mood suddenly turned from gloomy to sunny. Thank you, Dad. Actually, it doesn't need to be too expensive. Just like Bruce's. Peter was silent for a second. You are dreaming. On the way back to Patrick's farm, Bruce only drove an ordinary business SUV. There was no conversation along the way, and everyone arrived at the farm quickly at noon. Because it was the weekend, there were more people on the farm. Raven and Tom did not go to Hogwarts. Louise, Lana and Chloe also came to the farm. Party Queen Louise came to invite the family to the party. Chloe, who had always wanted to interview Bruce, saw Bruce coming and immediately pestered him with her bright eyes. Dad, I feel a little uncomfortable today. After seeing Peter coming back, Raven came over worriedly and said to him, I always feel like something bad is going to happen. Chapter 525 Clark has no parents anymore. Bad things? You mean? I don't know, Dad, I just have this feeling. Raven folded her arms across her chest. Maybe it's just my illusion, but my feeling is very accurate. Last time at Hogwarts, when I was attacked by a big spider in the Forbidden Forest, I was warned in advance. She talked about her last experience in the Forbidden Forest. When have you entered the Forbidden Forest? Peter seemed to have discovered something very important from his daughter's words. The Forbidden Forest, also often called the Dark Forest, is located on the edge of the grounds of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. As its name suggests, Hogwarts students are usually not allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest, unless they are in detention or taking special circumstances such as care of magical creatures. Students can enter the Forbidden Forest. You have been in detention, in Hogwarts? Raven, Peter looked his daughter up and down suspiciously. No, Raven looked down at her newly bought purple bowtail shoes with a guilty conscience, and her mind was frantically thinking about how to deal with it. Raven, there are many dangerous magical creatures in the Forbidden Forest. I remember that Hogwarts prohibits students from entering. Raven looked up and quickly found an excuse. Dad, I just want to see the unicorns. Unicorns? Yes, I heard that there are unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. Not only unicorns, but also acromantulas, thestrals, unicorns, centaurs, werewolves, grops, etc. all exist in the Forbidden Forest. As soon as Raven finished speaking, Tom came over and said to the two of them, although most werewolves don't live in the Forbidden Forest, Dad, Tom cast his gaze at Peter and said to him, Raven's nickname in Slytherin is Slytherin Raven. Professor Snape has always regarded her as the pride of the college. If she wants to go to a place, even a forbidden place can be easily done. Seeing Tom complaining to his father in his annoying London accent, Raven snorted coldly, I heard that you are also very popular in Ravenclaw, Tom. Many people praise you as a genius and think you are a perfect representative, but soon she changed the subject. But, Tom, I heard that you gave up joining the Quidditch team. Don't say you don't dare to compete with me on the court. Hearing Raven mention that she gave up joining the Quidditch team, Tom said with an unchanged expression, compared to playing on the court myself, I would rather be a spectator. I hate flying lessons. To be exact, I don't like flying around on a broomstick, but I will still support our team. Raven quickly exposed Tom's words. No, Tom, you just lack passion. You try to cover up your lack of passion for many things and your lack of empathy for many people. Maybe Quidditch games are just a drama performance that you are not interested in. You have a stern face for many things. Doesn't life on the farm make you unhappy? Being attacked by Raven's sharp words, Tom fought back. No, you are wrong, Raven. I just don't want to see some people being arrogant after Slytherin House won the game. That's because Ravenclaw lost, right? Peter, who had a headache, rubbed his head when he saw the quarrel between Raven and Tom escalating. Quiet, Peter glared at Raven and Tom with dissatisfaction after he stopped them. Can you two be quiet? Raven, don't you want to discuss your censor warning with me? Don't let the topic go off track. After hearing Peter's dissatisfaction, Raven glanced at Tom, who had a calm expression. Sorry, Dad, she just said something, and then she seemed to sense something and raised her head suddenly. In her astonished eyes, the world tree emitted a dazzling white light. The dazzling and warm white light instantly overflowed. Then, in the shocked eyes of everyone, the white light formed a milky white light shield covering the entire farm. What is this? Louise originally surrounded Bruce, wanting to take the opportunity to get an interview promise from the richest man in Gotham. After seeing the abnormality of the farm, she opened her mouth in surprise. After the milky white light shield born from the world tree enveloped the farm, an invisible wave suddenly came from a distance. The wave that vibrated the air collided with the milky white shield and immediately melted into nothingness. Then the milky white shield gradually disappeared. What happened? Rhea witnessed everything and cast a puzzled and shocked look at Peter. I don't know. Peter also felt confused. He pushed open the door, walked out of the living room and looked at the turbid air outside. He felt that the world seemed to have become a little weird. Everyone followed Peter out of the living room. Loki took a deep breath and cast his eyes on the abnormal world tree just now. Dad, I feel that the world tree seems to have helped us resist some kind of invasion just now, Loki told Peter his feelings. Well, I have this feeling too, but this invasion may not be an invasion in the physical sense, Peter nodded and said. Clark, who was standing at the back, felt a little uneasy in his heart. He hesitated and said to Peter, Godfather, I want to go home and take a look. Go. Peter looked at the Kent farm in the distance and said to Clark, let Izu go with you. Rushing to the farm, looking at the familiar home that seemed to have a hint of strangeness, Clark was slightly stunned. His own home seemed to have undergone some subtle changes. Bang! In the open space in front of the farm, Jonathan was chopping wood with an axe. The log was hit hard by his axe and split into two halves. After wiping the sweat off his face, Jonathan raised his head and saw Clark and Izu. He stopped what he was doing and looked at the two of them in confusion. Dad, Clark walked up to him and asked, Are you okay, Dad? Jonathan looked back in confusion when he heard Clark's words to make sure that the other party was talking to him. Are you talking to me, kid? He asked Clark with some uncertainty. Of course, Dad, don't you recognize me? Clark was slightly stunned for a long time, and said to the other party in a hurried tone, Dad, what happened? You may have made a mistake, child. I am not your father. Jonathan smiled at him. Maybe your father and I look a lot like each other. No, you are my father, aren't you, Jonathan Kent? Yes, I am Jonathan Kent, but I don't have a child. Didn't you pick me up more than 10 years ago? No. Jonathan stood up straight. Maybe you need help, child. Where is your home? I will take you back. He thought Clark and Izu might have encountered some trouble. Jonathan, hearing the voice, Martha opened the door and walked out. Walking to her husband, looking at the two strangers, she asked her husband, Do we have guests, Mom? Clark was in a state of confusion at this time. Looking at his mother who didn't recognize him, he asked in disbelief, Don't you recognize me? Mom, Martha was stunned when she heard Clark calling her mother. Then she organized her words and said to Clark, You may have recognized the wrong person, child. I am not your mother. What is your name? Child, maybe Jonathan can take you home. Clark's heart was in a mess when he heard that his parents did not recognize him. Looking at the familiar farm, he whispered, I am Clark Patrick Kent. Do you really not recognize me? Clark's eyes were red, and he asked his parents uncomfortably, Dad, don't you remember that when I was 5 years old, you and your godfather took me to the playground in the next town for the first time, and I broke the seats in the playground? Listening to Clark's story, Jonathan shook his head blankly. Clark, Izu put his hand on Clark's shoulder and shook his head slightly at him, who turned his head. Let's go back to the farm first. After the two left, the couple stared at their backs as they disappeared. I think I seem to know them, Martha frowned and said, especially the child named Clark. Maybe. I have seen them somewhere before. Midtown. Police station. Barry, wake up. Barry, who had buried his head in his desk, was called out with sleepy eyes. Forrest. Barry raised his head and looked at a colleague who woke him up. I know we have spent 18 hours on Miss Alchemy's murder case, but Director Singer doesn't care about that. Hurry up and get to work. Don't get caught by him. Forrest urged him to get up and put the information at hand on his desk. Barry, who was a little confused, looked at his colleague who was talking non-stop. Who is Miss Alchemy? It was the first time he heard this name. Too late, the door creaked open and Director Singer walked in. Next time you fall asleep at work, you should be vigilant enough. Director Singer pushed the door open and said to Barry. Forrest, a bearded and sturdy man, spoke for Barry. Let him rest. Singer, we've all been trying to solve the case all night. Singer's eyebrows moved. We all know who murdered Miss Alchemy, Forrest, and what I pray is that you can get some clues. Once we find the clues, we can uncover the ultimate truth behind him and find out the truth about the incident of Midtown's greatest superhero, Citizen Cold. Wait. Hearing that the other party seemed to be talking about Captain Cold, Barry immediately sobered up. You said Captain Cold, the guy from the Rogue Gang. What is the Rogue Gang? Now it was Singer and Forrest's turn to be confused. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.